Chapter 924. The Divine Stone of Heavenly Fire and the Divine Stone of Extreme Frost. The spiritual energy of either of these two stones was enough to easily destroy the House of Storms. Chu Fengmian forcefully devoured such a terrifying amount of spiritual energy. Fire and water were incompatible. The spiritual energy of the two stones burst out in an instant in Chu Fengmian's body and began to fight against each other. Chu Fengmian's internal organs were frozen in one moment and burned by the heavenly fire in the next. This feeling was much more terrible than any pain Chu Fengmian had ever experienced. Kid, if you can't hold on, stop immediately. You haven't started refining yet. You still have a chance to stop. Xing Xian could see Chu Fengmian's pain and hurriedly shouted. The pain of devouring a single piece of D-Rock was enough to kill countless geniuses while cultivating the art of 5 primal chaos emperors. Now, that Chu Fengmian was swallowing 2 stones at the same time. The pain was many times more terrible. Although Xing Xian knew that Chu Fengmian's willpower was absolutely tenacious, he was still worried that Chu Fengmian would really die from the pain. No! Chu Fengmian's ferocious face forced a smile. He, Chu Fengmian, had been reborn. He would never give up in this life. The chaotic 5 elements art was crazy. Chu Fengmian was even crazier than him. Refine for me. Chu Fengmian suddenly mobilized his spiritual energy and began to refine the power of the 2 stones. Once he chose to start refining, there was no turning back. There were only 2 paths. Succeed or die. There was no other way. What a crazy kid. How can a kid in his early 20s have such terrifying willpower? Xing Xian saw that Chu Fengmian had already made up his mind and could only shake his head helplessly. Since Chu Fengmian had chosen to refine, there was no turning back. Even Xing Xian felt strange about Chu Fengmian's willpower. Since Xing Xian was born, he had seen countless geniuses and monsters. But Chu Fengmian was the most special one. I hope you won't let me down. Let me leave the 9 regions and go back. Xing Xian whispered to himself. He raised his head and seemed to be looking at the outer realm. From his eyes, one could see some nostalgia and killing intent. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Chu Fengmian's body was alternating between hot and cold every second. Regardless of whether it was the flame or the chill, they were both the most terrifying existences in the entire 9 zones. Chu Fengmian's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were almost destroyed every time they were flipped upside down. However, Chu Fengmian relied on his terrifying vitality to hold on every time. 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times. No matter how many times Chu Fengmian's body was destroyed, his body could always recover. 6 hours had passed. Almost an instant of pain was enough to make a ruler die from the pain. As for Chu Fengmian, he had already endured for a full 6 hours. His pain did not lessen with time. Instead, it became more and more intense. As Chu Fengmian refined more and more ice and fire spiritual energy, the confrontation between the 2 spiritual energies became more and more serious. However, Chu Fengmian was still sitting in the same place, motionless. His face was already extremely ferocious. However, Chu Fengmian's eyes were still incomparably resolute. This resoluteness was unshakable. Divine power of ice and fire subdue. After an unknown period of time, Chu Fengmian suddenly stood up. The moment he stood up abruptly, his aura was extremely terrifying. In the face of such pain, Chu Fengmian's aura did not weaken. Instead, it became more and more terrifying as the training went on. 2 spiritual veins gradually condensed on Chu Fengmian's back. These 2 spiritual veins, one ice and one fire, began to condense as Chu Fengmian continued to devour the spiritual energy of the 2 divine stones. He actually withstood it. Xing Xian looked at the 2 spiritual veins that were gradually condensing on Chu Fengmian's back. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Throughout history, countless geniuses and monsters had died because of this chaotic 5 emperors art. The geniuses who were able to cultivate the chaotic 5 emperors art were all geniuses who possessed the divine veins. It could be said that their aptitude was not inferior to Chu Fengmian's. Some of them were even more terrifying than Chu Fengmian's. However, countless of them had died under this pain, not to mention that Chu Fengmian was devouring 2 divine stones at the same time. Xing Xian probably never thought that Chu Fengmian would actually be able to make it through. The moment the 2 spiritual veins condensed, it meant that the cultivation was completed. The condensing of spiritual veins was the final step of the chaotic 5 Emperors art. However, it was also the most dangerous step. The slightest carelessness could lead to a complete loss. What exactly did he go through to have such a tenacious will? Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to himself. He did not choose Chu Fengmian willingly. It was just that the person at the bottom of the lake was who? He had no other choice but to accept Chu Fengmian as his master. Therefore, Xing Xian did not expect Chu Fengmian to reach this step. He also could not imagine why Chu Fengmian desired power so much. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had seen his master being killed with his own eyes. His senior brothers and sisters were killed by the 7 great sections. Chu Fengmian's desire for power had reached its peak. As long as he could obtain power, Chu Fengmian would not choose to give up no matter how difficult it was. The power of the 2 divine stones has finally been completely devoured. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that the power of the 2 divine stones had been completely devoured by Chu Fengmian. All the power was integrated into Chu Fengmian's body to condense the 2 spiritual veins. However, Chu Fengmian could not relax at this time. He was even more vigilant than before. The pain that Chu Fengmian was suffering now was countless times more than when he was devouring. Even Chu Fengmian's soul felt like it was being torn apart by this power. The pain was extreme. Even death, for Chu Fengmian, was a kind of desire, a kind of release. No, I can't die. I haven't taken my revenge. I haven't killed the 7 great sects. I can't die. Revenge. These 2 words made Chu Fengmian's eyes turn red. He desired power. His everything was for these 2 words. Therefore, he could not give up. Condense. Ice and fire divine power. Subdue them all. I want to stand at the top of the 9 regions. Anyone, any existence must submit. Chapter 925. Chu Fengmian shouted angrily. Boom! Beside Chu Fengmian, the ice and fire spiritual energies were gradually surrendering to Chu Fengmian. An indomitable aura rose from Chu Fengmian's back and soared into the sky. He, Chu Fengmian, wanted to be the emperor of the 9 regions. Now, he couldn't even subdue the 2 godstones. How could he subdue them and dominate the 9 regions? Boom! Boom! The 2 spiritual meridians formed behind Chu Fengmian's back in a breath's time. Spiritual energy gushed out from the 2 spiritual veins. It was as if a long river had finally been opened. The endless spiritual energy filled Chu Fengmian's body like a flood. Chu Fengmian's power continued to surge in this spiritual energy, and it continued to increase without end. Chu Fengmian's realm didn't change, but in terms of power, it was several times stronger than before. This was the power of the innate godly body. Warriors who possessed the innate divine body could be said to be invincible when fighting against those of the same level. This was because their spiritual energy alone was many times stronger than martial artists of the same realm. Moreover, it was supported by the innate power. Now, Chu Fengmian could finally taste the power of the innate godly body. He had swallowed the heavenly fire divine stone and the extreme cold divine stone to cultivate the ice and fire divine body. It was many times stronger than the godly body that had swallowed a single godstone. The godly body that had swallowed a single godstone was similar to Han Yue Li's profound cold body. Among the countless innate godly bodies, it could only be ranked in the middle. Although he was also extremely talented, there was still a gap between him and the innate divine bodies that were ranked in the top 10. However, Chu Fengmian's ice and fire divine body had 2 spiritual meridians, one ice and one fire, that complemented each other in Chu Fengmian's body. The ice and fire divine body was probably not inferior to the top 10 divine bodies among the innate divine bodies. Chu Fengmian slowly raised his hand. From his palm, 2 forces, one ice and one fire, hovered at the same time. Is this the power of the ice and fire divine body? Chu Fengmian suddenly hit the air with his palm. Boom! Rumble. In front of Chu Fengmian, almost unparalleled power erupted. The power of this palm alone was even close to the power that Chu Fengmian had unleashed when he used the mortal Emperor Jar. What a terrifying power! What the hell is going on? How could there be such a huge change? Luo Shi watched from afar as Chu Fengmian made his move. She kept retreating, afraid that she would be affected by this power. If anyone was affected by this power, even if they were a ruler, they would most likely be doomed. In less than a day, Chu Fengmian's strength had grown to such a terrifying level. His realm hasn't changed at all, but his strength has increased countless times. This is beyond the heavens mandate realm. Even emperors aren't a match for him anymore. Luo Shi looked at Chu Fengmian in shock. However, Luo Shi would never have thought that Chu Fengmian would have to pay such a huge price to possess such power. The slightest misstep would result in eternal damnation. In the entire 9 regions, Chu Fengmian was probably the only one who could endure such great pain to cultivate the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors. Chu Fengmian looked at the scene in front of him and was very satisfied. The power of the ice and fire divine body that he had just activated was probably several times stronger than before. The divine body, condensed by the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors, was not inferior to the current divine body. The true chaotic divine body was even more powerful than any innate divine body. It could be said that although Chu Fengmian's realm did not change after coming to the House of Storms, his strength was many times stronger than before. The ice and fire divine body that Chu Fengmian had condensed had also found a fragment of the mortal Emperor Jar. The ice and fire divine bodies help to Chu Fengmian was not that simple. In the future, as Chu Fengmian's strength became stronger, the ice and fire divine body would be more helpful to him. The ice and fire divine body was exactly the same as the innate divine body. The stronger the warrior, the more he could exert the innate divine power. It seems that the treasures of the House of Storms should be here. The square where Chu Fengmian was already at the end of the palace. It seemed that the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors and the 2 divine stones should be the last treasures left by Venerable Kanglin. I wonder what kind of person Venerable Kanglin is to step out of the 9 regions. If one day I step out of the 9 regions, I might have a chance to meet him. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. Chu Fengmian had obtained a lot of ancient caverns and seen a lot of treasures, but the treasures left behind by immortal Venerable Kanglin were absolutely the most shocking to him. Let's go. After sighing, Chu Fengmian looked at Luo Shi and said. The 2 figures gradually left the depths of the palace and walked towards the outside. It had only been 3 days since the opening of the House of Storms. The 3 sovereigns should still be in the House of Storms and had not left. It's time to settle the score. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered, and some killing intent emerged in his eyes. The 3 sovereigns had forced Chu Fengmian into such a desperate situation. Chu Fengmian had sworn that he would kill the 3 of them. Now, it was indeed the time to fulfill his promise. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's figures returned to the entrance of the palace. After leaving the palace, they were about to return to the flame heavenly lake. But this time, facing the heavenly fire of the flame heavenly lake, Chu Fengmian's heart was not as frightened as before. Hold me tight. Chu Fengmian carried Luo Shi with one hand and suddenly rushed out. As soon as they left the palace and fell into the flame heavenly lake, countless colorless pure yang heavenly fire swept towards Chu Fengmian. These pure yang heavenly fire were enough to devour all living things. Humph! Chu Fengmian glanced at the pure yang heavenly fire and activated the ice and fire spiritual vein. Suddenly, layers of blue mysterious ice condensed around Chu Fengmian. Even the surrounding pure yang heavenly fire could not burn through the blue mysterious ice. Chu Fengmian stood in it and walked through the flame heavenly lake, safe and sound. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian carried Luo Shi, and his figure gradually turned into a ray of light, flying directly above the flame heavenly lake. Chapter 9:26. It's been 3 days. Why haven't the two of them come up yet? Above the blaze heaven lake, Emperor Bao frowned and said as he looked at the countless flames that filled the lake. The sky above the blaze heaven lake was still filled with countless spiritual energy that formed an inescapable net. These densely packed restrictions completely sealed off the sky above the blaze heaven lake. No one could leave the blaze heaven lake. Emperor Bao, Emperor Ning, and Emperor Li, the three sovereigns, were standing above the blaze heaven lake, overlooking everything below. In the past 3 days, they had not left the blaze heaven lake. Instead, they were waiting for Chu Fengyan's attack. However, 3 days had passed, and they still could not find Chu Fengyan's figure. Maybe this kid has already died in the flame sky lake and was burned to ashes by the heavenly fire. Even a Wushang old ancestor wouldn't be able to hold on for 3 days. How could this kid do it? Emperor Ning said impatiently. Let's leave. It's not easy to come to the House of Storms. Instead of wasting time here, we might as well look for the treasures. That's right. It's a pity not to look for the treasures of the House of Storms. This kid is definitely dead after falling into the blaze heaven lake. Let's not bother about him anymore. Emperor Li also said from the side. Let's wait. This kid is hiding too many strange things. Maybe he's not dead yet. Emperor Bao's eyes flickered as he shook his head. Chu Fengyan had escaped from the encirclement of the experts of the 7 major sects countless times. He would not believe that Chu Fengyan would die until the very last moment. Emperor Ning and Emperor Li shook their heads when they heard Emperor Bao's words. However, they did not say anything else. In their opinion, Emperor Bao was being too cautious. In 3 days, even an immortal realm supreme old ancestor would be burned to death by the heavenly fire if he fell into the blaze heaven lake. Not to mention an immortal realm brat. At this moment, in the blaze heaven lake, a ray of light was extremely fast. It shuttled through the countless flames and rushed up from the bottom of the blaze heaven lake. Boom! At this moment, a rumbling sound resounded within the flame sky lake. What's going on? Someone is rushing up from the blaze heaven lake. Is it Chu Fengyan? He's not dead yet. The three sovereigns' faces changed as they quickly turned their heads to look. They immediately saw Chu Fengyan shuttling through the countless heavenly fire of the blaze heaven lake. 3 days? This kid is still not dead? Emperor Ning and Emperor Li looked at Chu Fengyan and had a look of disbelief. 3 days. Even if they were to be in the Yintian Lake, they would undoubtedly die. However, Chu Fengyan was actually still alive. However, their shocked looks, of course, Chu died. Ts. He stayed in the flame heaven lake for 3 days. No matter what method he used, he must be incomparably weak right now. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to kill this kid first. As Sovereign Ning spoke, he had already made his move. Emperor Ning's figure suddenly disappeared in the air. He turned into a ray of light and rushed over to where Chu Fengyan was. In an instant, he was in front of Chu Fengyan. His face was extremely ferocious as he slammed his palm at Chu Fengyan's chest. That kid. The palm contained endless killing intent as it enveloped Chu Fengyan. In 3 days, Emperor Ning had fully recovered from his injuries. Now, he was in a state of full strength. The sharp spiritual energy in the palm struck Chu Fengyan. I didn't expect you to still be waiting for me. Well, I don't have to look for you one by one. Chu Fengyan saw that the three sovereigns had not left yet. It seemed that they still wanted to wait for Chu Fengyan. That's good. It would save Chu Fengyan the trouble of looking for them one by one. In the face of Sovereign Ning's terrifying palm strike, Chu Fengyan sneered. He didn't try to dodge, but instead rushed forward. He slammed his palm at Emperor Ning with his bare hands. Courting death. Seeing Chu Fengyan resist with his bare hands, Emperor Ning's eyes were filled with mockery. Previously, Chu Fengyan was able to contend with them because of his sword intent and the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword. If he could not kill Chu Fengyan with his bare hands, then he did not deserve to be called sovereign. Hearing Emperor Ning's mockery, Chu Fengyan's lips curled into a cold smile. Just as the two palms were about to collide in the air, Chu Fengmian suddenly said softly. Heavenly fire. The power of the fire spiritual vein was released from Chu Fengmian's body and integrated into Chu Fengmian's palm. Layers of pure, yang, heavenly fire spread out from Chu Fengmian's palm. Die! Boom! Countless pure, yang, heavenly fire blasted out with Chu Fengmian's palm. The pure, yang, heavenly fire was enough to burn everything. The spiritual energy of Emperor Ning's palm was burned into nothing by the pure, yang, heavenly fire. But it was not over yet. Countless pure, yang, heavenly fire engulfed Emperor Ning's body and plunged him into a sea of fire. What kind of fire is this? Pure, yang, heavenly fire. How is this possible? How can you control the pure, yang, heavenly fire? In the sea of fire, Emperor Ning screamed in agony. At first, Emperor Ning did not take the fire seriously. Ordinary fire could not threaten sovereigns like him. But in the next moment, Emperor Ning's expression changed completely. Once touched by the pure, yang, heavenly fire, it would not stop until one was dead. His spiritual energy could not resist the burning of the pure, yang, heavenly fire. Die! Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Ning and slapped him again. Emperor Ning's body was smashed into pieces by this palm. Only a mist of blood was left in the air. Sovereign Ning, a sovereign of the heavenly mandate realm, was killed in a single move by Chu Fengmian. Not bad. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a satisfied smile. The pure yang heavenly fire was not something that could be controlled by humans. Only a few people with innate divine bodies were qualified to control it. Chu Fengmian condensed the pure yang heavenly fire all of a sudden. Even a sovereign would be killed by it. This was the terrifying part of the divine body of ice and fire. Devour. Chu Fengmian looked at the mist of blood and waved his hand. Suddenly, a vortex was formed. It devoured the blood mist that filled the sky and sent it to the sacred tree, nourishing the sacred tree and causing it to grow continuously. Chapter 9:27. The divine tree was still very weak. Every time it devoured the blood essence of an emperor, it would grow a little. Chu Fengmian could feel that his body was becoming tougher as the divine tree grew. Emperor Bao and Emperor Li only recovered from their days when they saw Chu Fengmian's aura rising steadily. Emperor Ning died, just like that. Emperor Ning was an emperor. Who would have thought that he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian didn't even use a spiritual weapon. He could kill Emperor Ning with his bare hands. Not good. This kid must have had a fortuitous encounter. We can't let him leave the flame heavenly lake. Emperor Bao was the first to react and shouted. Now that Chu Fengmian was still in the flame heavenly lake, they could still think of a way to deal with him. If Chu Fengmian rushed out, it would be really troublesome. Seal. On the flame heavenly lake, the spiritual energy that had been set up long ago was suddenly activated. Streams of spiritual energies intertwined with each other, forming a huge array that blocked the flame heavenly lake. At the same time, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li attacked at the same time. The spiritual energy on their bodies instantly burst out. The Million Treasure River bombarded the air, and endless spiritual energy bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. Within a breath's time, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li had unleashed countless martial skills at Chu Fengmian at the same time. Countless martial skills drowned Chu Fengmian. If it was before, Chu Fengmian would have to desperately defend against the joint attack of Emperor Bao and Emperor Li. He might even have to use all his trump cards. But this time, Chu Fengmian didn't do anything. He didn't even care about the bombardment of the martial skills. He directly carried Luo, Shi, and rushed towards the flame heavenly lake. What's going on? Is this kid crazy? Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li's eyes were filled with shock. Under the bombardment of such martial skills, Chu Fengmian didn't care and didn't even try to defend. But in the next moment, when the martial skills bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a thin layer of ice suddenly condensed around Chu Fengmian's body. This thin ice looked like it would shatter with a touch, but when the countless martial techniques bombarded it, it actually did not budge in the slightest. All the martial techniques were blocked by the thin layer of ice around Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's body directly rushed into the array above the flame sky lake. Countless spiritual energies kept entangling Chu Fengmian, preventing him from taking another step. Tear! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. He suddenly waved his hand, which turned into a huge war dragon claw in the air. The formation set up by the four sovereigns was torn apart by the war dragon's claw. The formation set up by the four rulers could not stop Chu Fengmian at this moment and was forcefully torn apart. I'm finally out. After leaving the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian finally revealed a slight smile. When he looked at Emperor Li and Emperor Bao again, the killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. In the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian still had to divide a large portion of his spiritual energy to resist the surrounding heavenly fire. But now, Chu Fengmian finally rushed out. Now, it was time to settle the score. Not good. He rushed out. Chu Fengmian's speed was too fast. The formation set up above the flame sky lake did not delay Chu Fengmian at all. It was instantly torn apart in front of Chu Fengmian. By the time Emperor Bao and Emperor Li reacted, Chu Fengmian had already rushed out of the flame sky lake with Luo Shi in his arms. In just 3 days, how did this kid become so strong? Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian with deep fear in his eyes. If Chu Fengmian was able to contend with them before, it was because of Chu Fengmian's fortuitous encounter and his countless spiritual weapons. In terms of true strength, Emperor Bao was definitely able to crush Chu Fengmian. But now, Chu Fengmian could rush out of the flame sky lake with his bare hands and kill Emperor Ning with one blow. Even if Emperor Ning was careless, it was enough to prove Chu Fengmian's strength. No, it's not easy to kill this kid now. Let's capture Charm Demon Supreme Lord first. The two of them must have teamed up to capture Charm Demon Supreme Lord and deal with this kid. Emperor Bao thought quickly in his heart. Now that Chu Fengmian rushed out with Luo Shi, it naturally meant that the two of them were already on the same side. According to the rumors, Chu Fengmian's character was very clear about gratitude and grudges. He was very loyal. Now that he had captured Luo Shi, it would be enough to deal with Chu Fengmian. Thinking of this, Emperor Bao did not hesitate and suddenly attacked. The Million Treasure River immediately emerged from his hand. The Million Treasure River was no longer as broken as before. It had already recovered half of its strength. The power of the Million Treasure River descended from the sky. The spiritual energy of the 10,000 spiritual weapons was released at the same time, and all of them bombarded towards Chu Fengmian. However, Emperor Bao suddenly turned around and directly grabbed Luo Shi, who was beside Chu Fengmian. He directly grabbed Luo Shi's neck and wanted to capture her. How dare you touch my woman? You're courting death. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. His killing intent soared to the sky. Emperor Bao actually wanted to capture Luo Shi to threaten Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian valued friendship the most in his life. Emperor Bao clearly knew this, which was why he made such a decision. This undoubtedly touched Chu Fengmian's reverse scale. What Million Treasure River? Break it all. Chu Fengmian roared angrily. The power of the ice and fire divine body was pushed to the extreme. Suddenly, the two different spiritual energies appeared on Chu Fengmian's fists at the same time. In the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian used most of his strength to resist the heavenly fire. It was enough to kill Emperor Ning directly. Now that Chu Fengmian used all his strength, the aura on his body was simply terrifying to an indescribable extent. Even the emperors could not be compared to Chu Fengmian. His fist blasted towards the Million Treasure River. The power of ice and fire instantly swept across the entire Million Treasure River. Countless spiritual weapons in the Million Treasure River were directly shattered by the power of ice and fire. The Million Treasure River was directly shattered by Chu Fengmian's fist. The entire Million Treasure River began to shatter inch by inch. In an instant, it disappeared from the sky and turned into the tiniest powder floating in the air. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's other fist blasted towards Emperor Bao. Chapter 928. Before the punch landed, The terrifying divine power of ice and fire caused Emperor Bao's expression to change drastically. The terrifying power was enough to tear his body apart. Even Emperor Bao, who had reached the peak of the heavenly fate realm, was shocked by the spiritual power. How could this man possess such terrifying power all of a sudden? Ice and fire. These are two completely different spiritual powers. It's impossible for them to appear at the same time. This boy's body actually accommodated these two spiritual powers. Shouldn't they explode when they clash? How could he still control them? Emperor Bao shouted in disbelief. These two diametrically opposed forces were actually integrated by Chu Fengmian's body. This was simply beyond his knowledge and understanding. However, there was no time for him to understand. After the divine power of ice and fire, Chu Fengmian's punch had already landed. Glazed golden body. Emperor Bao suddenly shouted, and a glass-like luster emerged from his body. His skin became crystal clear, and his entire body suddenly turned into a glass-like appearance. Emperor Bao's body no longer looked like a physical body, but an existence similar to a spiritual weapon. Emperor Bao's nickname was not because he had the 10,000 Treasures River, but because his body had been cultivated into an existence similar to a spirit weapon. A human's physical body naturally could not be compared to a spiritual weapon. Boy, no matter how many fortuitous encounters you have, you must die today. Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian's incoming punch and shouted. He also threw a punch over. His glazed golden body was tougher than a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. He did not believe that he would lose to Chu Fengmian in terms of physical body. Chu Fengmian was now fighting with his physical body, which gave him the best opportunity. From Bao Huang's fist wind, waves of colored glaze radiated out, turning his fist into an existence like colored glaze. It was incomparably hard as it rushed towards Chu Fengmian and threw a punch. You're digging your own grave. Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Bao's action, and his eyes flashed with ridicule. Compared to a spiritual weapon was naturally tougher. Unfortunately, this was only the body of an ordinary martial artist. Now that Chu Fengmian's physical body had been refined by the divine tree, it was definitely tougher than a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Since Emperor Bao dared to fight Chu Fengmian head-on, he was indeed courting death. Chu Fengmian was not angry. Instead, he laughed. He did not hold back his punch at all and collided with Emperor Bao's fist wind. Boom! When the two fists collided, there was a huge explosion in the air. The collision of their fists was no less powerful than the collision of two heaven-grade spirit artifacts. When Emperor Bao saw that Chu Fengmian didn't dodge and went straight for him, he couldn't help but smile. However, at the moment of collision, Emperor Bao's smile froze. His body felt as if it was being turned upside down by the collision. His internal organs were being swept up by an enormous force and were on the verge of shattering. Before Emperor Bao could stabilize himself, a cracking sound was heard all of a sudden. Emperor Bao's fist wind and his glazed right hand started to shatter gradually. In terms of physical body, even Emperor Bao's glazed golden body was not worth mentioning in front of Chu Fengmian. Bam! Emperor Bao's body was sent flying. His right hand was shattered and disappeared in the air. Countless cracks appeared on his body. His physical body, which was comparable to a sky-grade spirit weapon, was easily beaten into countless cracks by Chu Fengmian. Absolute kill of the heavens and earth. Just as the two forces collided and Emperor Bao's body was sent flying, Emperor Bao's voice suddenly rang out. Emperor Li's voice suddenly sounded. His body was extremely fast, and in his hand there was a short dagger that was about a foot long. His spiritual energy was integrated into the foot-long dagger. Suddenly, he attacked Chu Fengmian from behind and slashed at Chu Fengmian's body. Sneak attack. Absolute kill. Emperor Li had not made a move just now because he was waiting for the best opportunity. When Chu Fengmian and Emperor Bao collided, all of Chu Fengmian's attention was focused on Emperor Bao. Then he suddenly made a move. This foot-long dagger condensed Emperor Li's spiritual energy and pierced directly at Chu Fengmian's body. Once it pierced into Chu Fengmian's body, the spiritual energy contained in this foot-long dagger was enough to completely tear Chu Fengmian's body apart. However, this foot-long dagger suddenly stopped when it was less than 3 inches away from Chu Fengmian's body. A thin layer of ice suddenly appeared around Chu Fengmian's body. No matter how sharp this dagger was, it could not pierce through this thin layer of ice and could not advance any further. You think you can kill me with a sneak attack? Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. He had already expected Emperor Li to launch a sneak attack. Although Emperor Li's strength was not strong, this person was extremely scheming. He would definitely launch a sneak attack when Chu Fengmian was most relaxed. All of this was within Chu Fengmian's expectations. Not good, retreat quickly. After the assassination failed, Emperor Li's eyes revealed a sense of crisis. All of his spiritual energy was condensed on this foot-long dagger. After the assassination failed, he had no strength to contend with Chu Fengmian. Emperor Li's body hurriedly retreated, gradually distancing himself from Chu Fengmian. You still want to escape? Stay here. Chu Fengmian did not even raise his head. With a wave of his hand, an incomparably huge war dragon claw condensed in the air. This war dragon claw was incomparably majestic. The moment it descended from the sky and enveloped Emperor Li's body. The rolling dragons might firmly suppressed Emperor Li's body. Just this dragon's might alone made Emperor Li somewhat breathless. His face was full of horror. No! Before this roar could finish, the war dragon claw had mercilessly descended. All of Emperor Li's strength could not resist this war dragon claw. His body was directly shattered in an instant. His flesh and blood were directly obliterated, leaving only a cloud of essence blood that was devoured by the divine tree. It was another move. Not only Emperor Ning, but now even Emperor Li was killed in one move in front of Chu Fengmian. Of the 3 emperors, 2 were dead and 1 was injured. Although Luo Shi, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, knew that Chu Fengmian's current strength was certainly not the same as before, she was still frightened. Chu Fengmian was facing 3 emperors, super powerhouses who dominated the 9 regions. Since when were 3 emperors no different from ants in Chu Fengmian's eyes? They were easily killed by Chu Fengmian as if slaughtering chickens and dogs. Chapter 929. Shocking. Luo Shi, who had witnessed everything with her own eyes, was deeply shocked. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, who would have thought that a great ancestor of the divine martial realm could easily kill an emperor? Emperor Bao, who was the only one left, was dumbfounded. Emperor Li's assassination technique was terrifying to the extreme. 4 or 5 sovereigns had died in his hands. Those emperors did not even have time to react before they were assassinated by Emperor Li. Even though he had a deep understanding of Emperor Li, he had to be extremely careful. However, when Chu Fengmian fought with him, he could easily resolve Emperor Li's assassination. He could even kill Emperor Li directly, not giving him any chance to escape. Oh no, this person's strength can no longer be suppressed. I can only ask the great ancestor to come and kill him. Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian with fear in his eyes. Chu Fengmian had only advanced by 2 levels and reached the divine martial realm, but he already had such terrifying strength. If Chu Fengmian were to enter heaven's mandate one day and become a king, wouldn't his strength become even more terrifying? This person must be eliminated. Emperor Bao had made up his mind. He must escape and return to the sect to ask the great ancestor to kill Chu Fengmian. Golden body reconstruction. Suddenly, countless pills flew out in front of Emperor Bao. There were dozens of pills, all of which were heaven-level spiritual pills. He swallowed all of them in one breath. A huge amount of spiritual energy immediately helped Emperor Bao to reform his shattered, lustrous golden body. Let's go. After Emperor Bao reformed his golden body, he did not have any intention to fight against Chu Fengmian. Instead, he turned into a ray of light and escaped. After the 7th day of the House of Storms opening, all the martial artists would be teleported out. 3 days had already passed. After 4 days, they would be teleported out. Emperor Bao's lustrous golden body could be said to be the most difficult to kill among the emperors of the Destiny Realm. Fleeing from the House of Storms, Emperor Bao was confident that he could wait until the House of Storms was over. As long as he returned to the 9 regions, he would be able to summon the great ancestor of the sect to kill Chu Fengyan. You want to stall for time? When the House of Storms closes, you'll summon your sect's grand ancestor to kill me. Seeing Emperor Bao's actions, Chu Fengyan understood what Emperor Bao was thinking. Drag. Behind Emperor Bao were the incomparably large 7 sections. As long as they could delay until they returned to the 9 regions, the supreme ancestors of the 7 sects would definitely be able to kill Chu Fengyan. Emperor Bao's wishful thinking was not bad. Unfortunately, Chu Fengyan would not give him this opportunity. Stop trying to stall for time. Do you really think I can't kill you? If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as slaughtering a chicken or a dog. Looking at Emperor Bao's escaping light, Chu Fengyan sneered. As soon as his voice faded, Chu Fengyan's figure also moved. In just 3 breaths, Chu Fengyan's escaping light suddenly caught up. His escaping light was much faster than Emperor Bao's. Before Emperor Bao could heave a sigh of relief, he realized that Chu Fengyan had already arrived beside him. Damn it! Being forced into a desperate situation, Emperor Bao's face revealed a bit of madness. Since when had he, an Emperor Realm cultivator, been chased by a divine martial ancestor? Boom! The aura on Emperor Bao's body suddenly expanded in an instant. Rolling golden flames burned on his body. The golden flame was burning Emperor Bao's life essence blood. Emperor Bao did not hesitate to burn his blood essence. Now, he was going to make a last desperate attempt. This was already a sure kill move. He was going all out. Even if Emperor Bao defeated Chu Fengyan now, he would definitely die. It could be said that he was going all out. 1,000 treasure sacrifice. Heavenly mandate strike. Emperor Bao seemed to have turned himself into a spiritual weapon. He directly sacrificed himself to the heavens in exchange for unparalleled power. All of his spiritual energy was gathered on his right fist. He threw out a punch. The space of the House of Storms shattered under the terrifying power and started to disperse. This was Emperor Bao's ultimate punch. Under this punch, all living things would be annihilated. Not good. Retreat. Emperor Bao is going all out. Even if we don't kill him now, he'll definitely die in a few days. Luo Shi, who was at the side, felt the terrifying spiritual energy of Emperor Bao and hurriedly said, Emperor Bao, who was burning his blood essence, surpassed the heavenly mandate realm in a short period of time and reached the Paragon realm. The power that he possessed was already on a completely different level compared to before. Even if Chu Fengyan's strength had skyrocketed, it was still unknown who would win against Emperor Bao, who was at the Paragon realm. It's okay. Don't waste these few days. Even if he's struggling, he won't be a match for me. Hearing Luo Shi's reminder, Chu Fengyan sneered. Delay for a few days and wait for the lamp to run out of oil? There was no need for that. Now, Chu Fengyan would directly kill Emperor Bao and shatter all of his hopes. Sword come. Dang. The ancestral dragon's supreme sword instantly appeared in Chu Fengyan's hand. The moment Chu Fengyan held in his hand, the ancestral dragon's supreme sword could feel Chu Fengyan's power. It was no longer the same as before. Suddenly, a dragon's roar resounded, celebrating for Chu Fengyan. Let's use this person's blood as an offering to the sword. Breaking the firmament with a sword. Chu Fengyan held the ancestral dragon's supreme sword in his hand, and a soaring sword will erupted from his body. This sharp sword would tear apart some old ancestors who approached it. The power of the sword was condensed to its peak and then fell from the sky, clashing with Emperor Bao's heavenly mandate strike. Kacha! Kacha! When the two forces collided, there wasn't a rumble as expected. Instead, there was a crisp sound. Emperor Bao's heavenly mandate strike that he unleashed after risking his life couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengyan's sword. All of the spiritual energy was swept up by the sword and was mercilessly devoured by the sword. Emperor Bao's body was sent flying in front of the sword edge. In front of the sword, he was suddenly split into 2. Then, all of them began to shatter and disappear in the sky. In a frenzy, Emperor Bao's strength had reached the ultimate realm. However, he was easily destroyed by Chu Fengyan. From the sky, Emperor Bao's figure could no longer be seen, leaving only a pool of blood essence. Collect. Chu Fengyan grabbed with his hand and devoured all of the blood essence left by Emperor Bao. Then, he left without looking back. Chapter 9:30. In a mountain range of the House of Storms, a man was sitting calmly on top of the mountain range. Beside the man, one side was cold, and the other side was hot. These two spiritual energies were constantly emitted. The surrounding mountain range was divided into two. One side was extremely hot, while the other was extremely cold. This was a strange scene that had never appeared in the House of Storms. This man was Chu Fengyan. For days, Chu Fengyan was in this mountain range, motionless, comprehending the magic of the ice and fire divine body. An innate divine body also needed to be developed countless times before one could comprehend its true power. It was the same for Chu Fengyan's ice and fire divine body. In just 4 days, Chu Fengyan had a deeper understanding of the ice and fire divine body. Beside Chu Fengyan, Luo, she had been waiting quietly. She was also closing her eyes to comprehend the various things in the House of Storms. A battle of life and death was extremely helpful for a martial artist. It was enough to break through and comprehend a new realm. It's about time. The moment the sky above the House of Storms began to tear, Chu Fengyan slowly opened his eyes. 7 days had passed. It was time for the House of Storms to close. Chu Fengyan slowly stood up from the mountain range. At a glance, there was almost no spiritual energy emitted from Chu Fengyan's body. However, he could feel a kind of invisible pressure from it. Although there was no change in Chu Fengyan's realm, he was much more powerful than before he had entered the House of Storms after condensing the ice and fire divine body. The ice and fire divine body is indeed magical. Every time the 5 primal emperors' art forms a divine body, it will become many times stronger. I have only formed 2 of them now. If I were to form all 5 of them, how terrifying would it be? Chu Fengyan muttered to himself. The art of 5 chaos emperors was enough to condense the 5 elements divine body. Once the 5 elements divine body was condensed, it would return to the chaos and condense the chaos divine body. The chaos divine body was an existence that surpassed the celestial divine body. Since the creation of the art of 5 chaos emperors, no one had truly condensed the chaos divine body. If Chu Fengyan could condense it, he would be the first person to walk the path of the art of 5 chaos emperors. He would even surpass the existence who created the art of 5 chaos emperors. Unfortunately, condensing the 5 elements divine body was only a legend, a guess. If Chu Fengyan was able to do so, he would have truly made history. Let's not talk about the difficulties involved. Just the amount of divine stones needed to condense, it is simply impossible to find in the 9 regions. Chu Fengyan could not help but sigh. It was impossible to find godstones in the 9 realms. They could only go to the outer realms. They could only be found in the boundless outer space. Luo Shi, you're about to break through to the next level, right? Chu Fengyan said as he looked at Luo Shi, who was slowly waking up. Luo Shi's level was already at the limit of the heart-tempering realm. She was only 1 step away from entering the destiny realm and becoming a ruler. Now that she had obtained such a large piece of saint-grade spirit stone, in addition to the life and death battle she had experienced in the House of Storms this time, she could not help but feel relieved. With Luo Shi's aptitude, breaking through is no longer a difficult thing. That's right, but I have to return to the 6 Paths Demon Gate. Luo Shi looked at Chu Fengyan and suddenly said, if I want to break through, I have to return to the 6 Paths Demon Gate. My inheritance comes from the 6 Paths Demon Gate. I have to return to the 6 Paths Demon Gate and take everything that belongs to me. You want to return to the 6 Paths Demon Gate? Chu Fengyan could not help but frown when he heard Luo Shi's words. Luo Shi's return to the 6 Paths Demon Gate could be said to be an extremely dangerous matter. Chu Fengyan did not want Luo Shi to take the risk. But what about your situation? Although the Six Paths Demon Gate is dangerous, I have to return. If I don't, I will never be able to break through to the next level. Luo, she looked at Chu Fengyan with gentleness in her eyes. Don't worry. After all, I'm a supreme lord of the succubus sect. Even if they want to deal with me, it won't be that easy. Once I obtain the inheritance, I will leave immediately and meet up with you. All right. Chu Fengyan thought for a moment and nodded. Luo Shi's strength came from the succubus sect of the Six Paths Demon Gate. She was different from Chu Fengyan. She had to return to the Nine Paths Demon Gate in order to break through to the next level. I'll leave the Kanglan Immortal Armor to you. If you encounter any danger, you can call for me. I will definitely save you. As Chu Fengyan spoke, he took out the Kanglan Immortal Armor from his empty ring. The Kanglan Immortal Armor was not very useful to Chu Fengyan. Now that he had the protection of the Divine Tree, his body was extremely tough. If even his Divine Tree protection was broken, then the Kanglan Immortal Armor wouldn't be of much use. It was better to give it to Luo Shi so that she could protect herself. The Kanglan Immortal Armor. Luo, she was pleasantly surprised when she heard Chu Fengyan's words, especially when she saw Chu Fengyan giving the Kanglan Immortal Armor to her. It was enough to prove how much Chu Fengyan cared about her. Luo, she did not decline and kept the Kanglan Immortal Armor. She poured a drop of blood essence into it and began to refine it. Gradually, it merged into her body. If she wanted to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate, she would definitely encounter some dangers. With the help of the Kanglan Immortal Armor, it would be much easier. Once the Kanglan Immortal Armor was refined, it would become invisible and hide by Luo Shi's side. It was only when Luo Shi was in danger that he would suddenly appear to help her block the danger. This is the map of the Six Paths Demon Gate. Luo Shi thought for a while, and suddenly, a jade talisman was sent into Chu Fengyan's mind. Suddenly, a map appeared in Chu Fengyan's mind. This map recorded a small world in the endless void. This was where the Six Paths Demon Gate was located. The Six Paths Demon Gate has been hiding in the endless void all this time. No wonder the people from the 7 major sects couldn't find them. Chu Fengyan was surprised when he saw the map. The lair of the Six Paths Demon Gate was really well hidden. It was hidden in the depths of the void. Without this map, even Chu Fengyan would find it extremely difficult to search for them. You have to be careful. The Demon Emperor will also participate in the 9 regions genius battle. The Demon Emperor's strength is extraordinarily terrifying. You have to be extremely careful. Luo Shi reminded Chu Fengyan before she left. Then, the two of them were sent out of the Kanglan Palace and flew in 2 different directions. Chapter 9:31. I didn't expect that even the Demon Emperor would want to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. In the central region, Chu Fengyan left the House of Storms and continued to travel through the central region. Although the 9 regions genius battle was a grand event, someone like the Demon Emperor shouldn't be participating in it. After all, the Demon Emperor had a lofty status. Given his status, he shouldn't be bothered to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. One of the reasons why the 9 regions genius tournament was able to attract so many warriors to participate was because of the outstanding performance of the 9 regions genius tournament. It was very likely that the 7 great sects would extend an olive branch to them and try to rope them in. To most cultivators, this was something they could only dream of. Therefore, most of the martialists who participated in the 9 regions genius tournament had this intention. They wanted to display their skills and make a name for themselves in the 9 regions genius tournament. As for the other reason, it was because the champion of the 9 regions genius battle would obtain a treasure. This treasure was jointly given out by the 7 great sections. In the 9 regions, it was definitely a treasure that countless patriarchs and sovereigns would fight over. There would also be many martialists who would come for this treasure. However, these 2 points did not have much meaning to the Demon Emperor. The first was to join one of the 7 great sections. How was that possible for the Demon Emperor? The second was to obtain the final treasure of the 9 regions genius tournament. Given the Demon Emperor's status, he had all kinds of treasures. Even if it was something that other sovereigns coveted, it was nothing to the Demon Emperor. He had the entire Six Paths demon sect under his control. so he could obtain any treasure he wanted. Unless, of course, the treasures from a 9 regions geniuses battle were extraordinary. Let's go take a look first. It would be a good thing if I could exchange blows with the Demon Emperor. Chu Fengmian sneered. Previously, Chu Fengmian had exchanged blows with the Demon Emperor in the returning Ruins Heaven. At that time, Chu Fengmian had taken advantage of the situation. He had killed the battle demon supremacy and alone demon supremacy in the hands of the Demon Emperor. However, Chu Fengmian had only fought with a doppelganger of the Demon Emperor. In terms of strength, that doppelganger had surpassed Chu Fengmian. This was because they had fought in the Heavenly Feather Divine region. As the master of the Heavenly Feather Palace, Chu Fengmian had a natural advantage in the Heavenly Feather Divine region. Even so, Chu Fengmian was barely able to fight the Devil Emperor's clone. The Devil Emperor had retreated because Chu Fengmian was in the Heavenly Feather Godland. There was no way he could kill Chu Fengmian. Otherwise, if the battle continued, Chu Fengmian would be the one to lose. Although Chu Fengmian wouldn't die, he would lose without a doubt. However, things would be different if Chu Fengmian were to fight the Demon Emperor again. Here we go. Chu Fengmian had condensed the Ice-Fire Divine Body, and his strength had skyrocketed. Even if he encountered the Devil Emperor, Chu Fengmian would defeat him sooner or later. The Demon Monarch of the Six Paths Demon Gate was a peerless genius. Chu Fengmian was determined to trample him under his feet. Looks like this 9 regions genius battle won't be boring. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. His figure continued to fly in the middle region. Soon, the scenery around him started to become familiar. Is this the ancient city of Ningzhou? Unknowingly, Chu Fengmian came to the ancient city of Ningzhou. The last time Chu Fengmian came from the northern region, he came directly to the ancient city of Ningzhou. This time, he came again. There seems to be a teleportation formation of the ancient Colosseum in the ancient city of Ningzhou. It can directly go to the ancient Colosseum. Chu Fengmian recalled that Gu Jin, the second daughter of the Gu family, seemed to have told Chu Fengmian this at that time. Let's go and take a look. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian's body moved and directly fell into the ancient city of Ningzhou. The layers of restrictions set up in the ancient city of Ningzhou were enough to stop an ordinary emperor. However, in front of Chu Fengmian, they were treated as nothing. He didn't care about these restrictions at all and swaggered in. None of the restrictions could detect Chu Fengmian's presence and trigger to stop him. "Senior, welcome to the Gu family." A voice suddenly sounded from Chu Fengmian's side. This voice was slightly surprised, but it was full of politeness. Chu Fengmian silently fell into the Gu family's residence in the ancient city of Ningzhou. It wasn't until Chu Fengmian showed up that a strand of spiritual awareness suddenly sensed his existence. "Patriarch Gu, we haven't seen each other for half a month. Don't you remember me?" Chu Fengmian heard this voice and said with a smile. The owner of this voice was the patriarch of the Gu family. "This voice, you Chu Fengmian?" When the patriarch of the Gu family heard Chu Fengmian's words, he was stunned at first, but then he realized that the voice seemed to be somewhat familiar. When he heard Chu Fengmian call himself Chu Fengmian, he immediately thought of Chu Fengmian's identity. He couldn't hide the surprise in his voice. He suddenly appeared and looked at Chu Fengmian as if he had seen a ghost. "Young Master Chu, when did you return to the ancient city of Ningzhou?" The patriarch of the Gu family asked, unable to hide his surprise. The last time he saw Chu Fengmian, he felt the terror of Chu Fengmian's strength. However, with his realm, it was enough to suppress Chu Fengmian. This time, Chu Fengmian actually came to the Gu family without a sound. Even the patriarch of the Gu family did not notice Chu Fengmian's trace. Chu Fengmian's strength was not inferior to a ruler's. Therefore, when the patriarch of the Gu family suddenly noticed that someone had come to their residence, he thought that a ruler had arrived. He did not expect that person to be Chu Fengmian. "I just came here. It's on the way," Chu Fengmian said casually. The people from the 6 demonic sects shouldn't be attacking the ancient city of Ningzhou anymore, right? The people from the 6 demonic sects have already left the surroundings of the ancient city of Ningzhou. The patriarch of the Gu family looked at Chu Fengmian for a long time before he asked in surprise, "Young Master Chu, your realm?" "Of course, I've already broken through. Thank you, Patriarch Gu. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to collect all the sacred herbs. It's all thanks to that sacred pill that I finally broke through. Chu Fengyan said with a smile. His current realm was no longer something that the patriarch of the Gu family could see. No matter how the patriarch of the Gu family looked, Chu Fengyan's realm was only nothingness. Chu Fengyan's realm was still on the fifth step of the life and death steps, which was the God Martial realm, which was slightly lower than the patriarch of the Gu family's heart-refining realm. However, Chu Fengyan's true strength was enough to easily kill a ruler. Even a ruler could not see Chu Fengyan's realm, let alone the patriarch of the Gu family. Chapter 932. What terrifying strength! I didn't expect this person to have such terrifying strength after just breaking through the life and death stage. The Gu clan head felt the terrifying aura emitted from Chu Fengyan's body and couldn't help but exclaim. Although Chu Fengyan's body didn't emit much terrifying spiritual energy, he could feel an invisible pressure just by standing beside him. Even without moving, it was enough to make the Gu clan head feel an invisible pressure. This was simply far beyond the Gu clan head's level. I wonder what level young Master Chu's current strength has reached. The Gu clan head suddenly asked. Chu Fengyan was a little surprised by the Gu clan head's question, but he still replied. Please be careful, Gu clan head. The instant he opened his mouth, Chu Fengyan faintly mobilized his spiritual energy, turning it into a terrifying pressure that directly enveloped the Gu clan head. The Gu clan head's mind suddenly turned blank under this pressure, and his face was filled with fear. Although Chu Fengyan withdrew his pressure in an instant, it was still enough to make the Gu clan head stunned for a moment. How terrifying! This person's strength has really reached a terrifying level. This pressure is no different from an emperor's. The Gu clan head was shocked. Just this pressure alone was enough to make him unable to resist. The Gu clan head was one of the most powerful figures among the ancestors. Just his pressure alone was enough to make him unable to resist. Only a ruler would be able to do all of this. If this person were to take action, it might be enough to save Jean this time, but the Gu clan head sighed inwardly, and his eyes revealed a bit of hesitation. Gu clan head, what trouble have you encountered? Chu Fengyan remained calm and suddenly thought of something. Where's Miss Jean? Why isn't she in Ning Province, Ancient City? When Chu Fengyan arrived at Ning Province, Ancient City, he had already discovered that Gu Jean wasn't there. Originally, Chu Fengyan didn't think much of it. But now, looking at the Gu clan head's appearance, there must be some secrets behind it. This trouble is related to Jean The head of the Gu family looked at Chu Fengyan and slowly opened his mouth. A few days ago, a young master of the Tianjin sect suddenly came to the ancient city of Ningzhou. He wanted to purchase a batch of elixirs, but he suddenly saw Jean and wanted to marry her as his concubine. Oh, isn't this a good thing? Why is the Gu family head unhappy? Chu Fengyan was slightly surprised when he heard the Gu family head's words. He was a young master of the Tianjin sect. Anyone who could become a young master of the Tianjin sect was at least one of the top geniuses of the younger generation in the Tianjin sect. With the Gu family status, if Gu Jin married this young master, it would naturally rise with the tide. But now, looking at the Gu family head's intentions, it didn't seem to be the case. Young Master Chu, you might not know this, but that young master has taken in countless concubines. He has over 1,000 wives and concubines. Furthermore, what he cultivates is a type of cultivation Tao. The patriarch of the Gu clan said with a troubled expression, that young master only wants to take Jean cultivation Tao. In less than 3 months, Jean will die. A few days ago, that young master has already sent a betrothal gift. He said that he will take Jean away in 2 days. This old man is incompetent, so I can only send Jean to another city to hide for a while. The cultivation Tao, people of the Tianjin sect actually cultivate this kind of demonic cultivation Tao. After hearing the Gu family head's words, Chu Fengyan's eyes revealed a bit of coldness. The cultivation Tao was extremely rare in the current 9 regions, but Chu Fengyan knew that it was a type of demonic cultivation Tao. Some male warriors cultivated by taking other women's cultivation Tao for their own use. The most ruthless part was that after the cultivation Tao was taken, the woman would be lucky enough to have half a life left. She would be no different from an ordinary person. If the cultivation Tao was more ruthless, she would directly die. This was an out-and-out demonic cultivation Tao. Chu Fengmian did not expect that the Tianjin sect, which prided itself on the righteous path, actually had a disciple who cultivated this kind of demonic cultivation Tao. Since I've come to this ancient city of Ningzhou, it's fate. I won't let Miss Gu Jin be taken by that young master. Chu Fengmian suddenly opened his mouth. Who is that young master? What's his background? That young master is called Jian Zongjia. He's a genius of the Tianjin sect. At such a young age, he has already reached the heart-refining realm. The patriarch of the Gu clan hurriedly said. Although this person is not easy to deal with, this old man can deal with him for a while. However, his master is a supreme elder of the Tianjin sect. He's an emperor, Emperor Yin. An emperor, Yin had actually appeared. This Jian Zongjia's background was indeed extraordinary. The corner of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a cold smile. Very good. Now, in order for his divine tree to grow, it needed the essence and blood of an emperor. Originally, Chu Fengmian did not know where to get the essence and blood of emperors. Now, it seemed that one by one, they had delivered themselves to his doorstep. I see. Patriarch Gu, you should go and bring Miss Gu Jin back. Chu Fengmian looked at the patriarch of the Gu clan and said calmly. But I heard that Emperor Yin, who is behind Jian Zongjia, will come personally. The patriarch of the Gu clan said nervously. So what? He's just an Emperor Yin. Since he's here, I'll offer his blood to my sword. Chu Fengmian said casually. Go ahead. A mere Emperor Yin is not worthy of my attention. A mere Emperor Yin is not worthy of my attention. Hearing Chu Fengmian's arrogant words, the patriarch of the Gu clan did not dare to refute. Chu Fengmian's aura was too terrifying. So much so that he did not even have the courage to refute Chu Fengmian's words. Okay, I'll go and call Jeaner back. The patriarch of the Gu clan hurriedly threw out a jade talisman. The two of them sat in the palace. Not long after, a stream of light landed steadily in the Gu clan. It was Gu Jin. The last time they met, Gu Jin's strength had improved, reaching the 9th level of life and death realm. In this way, she was not far from breaking through the life and death steps and becoming a first-generation old ancestor. Young Master Chu. Gu Jin came from afar and saw Chu Fengmian. Feeling the terrifying aura of Chu Fengmian, she could not help but feel a little fearful. The last time she saw Chu Fengmian, she was shocked by his strength. Today, she saw that Chu Fengmian's strength was much more terrifying than the last time she came to Ning Province Ancient City. Gu Jin, you actually came back. It seems like you finally decided to marry young Master Jian. Chapter 9:33. The figure of a young man slowly walked in from outside the palace. It was Gu Quan, whom he had met once in the Ning region ancient city. Gu Quan, what are you doing here? Seeing Gu Quan's arrival, the Gu family head's eyes flashed with anger. This time, young Master Jian wanted to marry Gu Jin, and this was related to Gu Quan. Although he was the Gu family head, he could not control the entire Gu family. Gu Quan was nurtured by the elders of the Gu family. Even if he was angry, he could not kill Gu Quan. Family head, I'm just here to give you a piece of advice. Young Master Jian will be here today to propose marriage. Family head and Gu Jin, please serve him well. Gu Quan glanced to the side and saw Chu Fengmian standing there. Gu Quan said coldly, also, this is an internal matter of our Gu family. Family head, please do not bring in outsiders to prevent young Master Jian from misunderstanding. 3 elders. As Gu Quan spoke, 3 old men slowly walked in from outside and stood behind Gu Quan. Those 3 old men were all in the heart refinement realm. Although they were a bit inferior to the Gu family's head, when the 3 of them joined hands, their strength greatly surpassed the Gu family's head. Not good, young Master Chu. These 3 are the grand elders of our Gu family. They are supporters of Gu Quan. Gu Jin quietly transmitted her voice to Chu Fengmian. She looked a little nervous. 3 grand elders. Why have you come here? When the head of the Gu clan saw the appearance of the three grand elders, his eyes revealed some fear as he spoke. We're just here to remind family head not to do anything stupid, an old man slowly said. He looked at Chu Fengyan and sized him up for a moment before he suddenly spoke. Lad, who are you? Why are you in the Gu family? I'm just a friend of Miss Gu Jean. I'm just passing by the Gu family, Chu Fengyan said casually. There was no expression in his eyes. Friend? I don't think so. You saved Gu Jean this time and came to our Gu family to ask for some benefits. That's already written off. Our Gu family has nothing to do with you. When Gu Quan heard Chu Fengyan's words, he suddenly sneered loudly. Today's matter is an internal affair of the Gu clan. As an outsider, you have no right to interfere. Elders, I suspect that this man is colluding with the Six Paths Demon Gate. He must be plotting against the Gu clan. The family head and Miss Gu Jean have been deceived by him. Elders, please subdue him and lock him up in the prison before interrogating him. That's right. This kid's background is unknown. He doesn't look like someone from our Ning Zhou ancient city. He must be plotting something against our Gu family. One of the grand elders suddenly spoke. Let's capture him first. When the time comes, I'll leave it to young Master Jian. Good. Brat, since you don't want to explain yourself, then we'll capture you and interrogate you properly. Attack. The moment the three grand elders spoke, they attacked at the same time. Three withered arms suddenly grabbed at Chu Fengyan. The three arms stacked on top of each other as their strength merged into one. They grabbed the space around Chu Fengyan. They wanted to capture Chu Fengyan's body and seal all of his spiritual energy. Young Master Chu, this is bad. This is our Gu clan's combined attack technique. The three grand elders are enough to capture an ordinary Emperor realm expert. Gu Jean said nervously when she saw the three grand elders taking action. However, before she could finish her words, the change in the scene left her dumbfounded. Three old men. Are you courting death? Chu Fengyan's eyes turned cold. Chu Fengyan was too lazy to get involved in the internal affairs of the Gu clan. However, since they had set their sights on Chu Fengyan, they were courting death. What kind of combined attack technique is this? Capturing an Emperor realm expert? All of you break. Chu Fengyan waved his sleeves, and a surge of spiritual energy rushed out. A dragon's roar suddenly resounded. In the face of this dragon roar, the three withered arms were all sent flying. With a cracking sound, all of them broke apart. Chu Fengyan did not use any power for this attack. Just the strength of his physical body was enough to directly break through the combined attack of the three grand elders of the Gu clan. Gu Quan, who was standing at the side, did not expect this to happen. He had suffered a loss at Chu Fengyan's hands once. This time, he called the three elders over to give Chu Fengyan a show of strength and teach him a lesson. However, he did not expect the three grand elders to be so weak in front of Chu Fengyan. Just one move was enough to break the three grand elders' combined attack. Not good. Quickly inform young Master Jian. This person must be a spy from the Six Paths Demon Sect. He must be plotting something against the Gu clan. Young Master Jian, please come quickly and kill this man. One of the grand elders shouted in the sky. Die. Chu Fengyan's eyes were cold as he grabbed the grand elder's neck. The grand elder, who was full of arrogance just a moment ago, was now being choked by Chu Fengyan as if he was a chicken. He was almost out of breath. Young Master Chu. The Gu clan master looked at Chu Fengyan as if he wanted to plead for mercy. However, Chu Fengyan took the initiative and spoke coldly. These pieces of trash are the cancer of the Gu clan. They will only cause trouble if they stay in the Gu clan. Today, they must die. You don't have to care about them. Gu clan master. Chu Fengyan's words revealed a deep killing intent. Since these people dared to provoke Chu Fengyan, it was useless for anyone to plead for mercy. Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, the three grand elders panicked. However, they still did not believe that Chu Fengyan dared to kill them. Boy, we are now young Master Jian's men. If you dare to kill us, young Master Jian will not let you go. Let's go now. When young Master Jian comes, kneel down and apologize. This is your only chance to live. A Grand Elder even threatened Chu Fengmian in an arrogant manner. However, before he could finish his arrogant words, he saw Chu Fengmian's palm move. Abruptly, that Supreme Elder was directly crushed by Chu Fengmian's palm. Only a miserable scream was left in the sky. The Grand Elder was crushed to death by Chu Fengmian's hand. Chapter 9:34. And the two of you must die too. After killing one of their Grand Elders, Chu Fengmian's killing intent grew even stronger. When he killed people, he had always cut the weeds and eliminated the roots. He had never left any trace of mercy. The head of the Gu family wanted to say something, but when he saw the ruthless killing intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes, he did not dare to open his mouth again. Head of the family, save us. The remaining two Grand Elders did not dare to doubt Chu Fengmian's words after seeing him crush one of their Grand Elders to death with their own eyes. Chu Fengmian had always said that he would kill without any hesitation. No one could stop him from killing the people he wanted to kill. Young Master Chu, Senior Chu, please let us go. We are willing to acknowledge you as our master and submit to you. The two Grand Elders hurriedly begged Chu Fengmian when they saw that begging the head of the Gu family was useless. Chu Fengmian's expression was as cold as before. You want to beg for mercy now? It's too late. Go to hell. Chu Fengmian said ruthlessly. This time, he announced the death of the two Grand Elders. Chu Fengmian's palm fell mercilessly. The bodies of the two Grand Elders began to swell crazily, as if they were about to explode. Kid, just you wait. Young Master Jian will definitely not let you go. Before they died, the two of them were still madly cursing. Young Master Jian? Soon, you will be able to meet young Master Jian. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Young Master Jian, you will all die. These three old fellows are dead. Consider it as cleaning up the Gu family. After killing the three Grand Elders, Chu Fengmian slowly descended into the palace. The head of the Gu family could not help but smile bitterly when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Thank you, young Master Chu. Don't worry. I have killed so many people from a Gu family. Of course, I will give you some compensation. Gu Jin, come here. Chu Fengmian looked at the head of the Gu family and suddenly laughed. He said to Gu Jin, Yes. Upon hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Gu Jin walked over to Chu Fengmian's side without hesitation. There was a ball of pure essence blood in Chu Fengmian's palm. It was the essence blood of the three Grand Elders. A drop of Chu Fengmian's own essence blood was added to it, causing it to shine with a dazzling golden light. I've killed 3 of your Gu family's ancestors. Now, I'll return one to you. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he suddenly threw a palm strike at Gu Jin. However, this palm strike did not pose any threat. Instead, the essence blood in his palm was directly injected into Gu Jin's body. The aura of the ancient brocade body started to swell frantically. His entire body was undergoing earth-shattering changes due to the refinement of the essence blood. Transcend life and death. In Gu Jin's body, a shackle that had been restraining her was suddenly released. It was the bottleneck that transcended life and death. Gu Jin's cultivation level suddenly surpassed the life and death steps and continued to climb until he reached the 4th step of the life and death steps, the unblemished realm. Only then did his aura stabilize. With a wave of his hand, Gu Jin's cultivation level underwent earth-shattering changes. I've surpassed the life and death steps and become an ancestor. Gu Jin felt the changes in his body and simply could not believe it. In the blink of an eye, it was enough to make a life and death realm martial artist directly become an ancestor. Moreover, it directly reached the unblemished realm. This was simply the kind of thing that could only be done by supreme ancestors in the legends. But now, it was done in front of everyone alive. What kind of technique is this? What level has this person's strength reached? Gu Jin, seeing this scene, the Gu family's patriarch's heart was in a perilous situation. His cultivation level was much higher than Gu Jin's, and he was also much more knowledgeable. Naturally, he knew how terrifying the technique was to be able to achieve this. Not to mention some emperors, even a quasi-supreme ancestor, could not do it. Only a supreme ancestor who had truly stepped into the immortal realm could do all this. Currently, Chu Fumian's cultivation level was not even at the Emperor realm, but his technique was comparable to that of a supreme ancestor. This was definitely something to marvel at, especially when the Gu family's patriarch transcended the life and death steps. It was extremely difficult. No one knew how many methods he had to use to achieve all this. But now Gu Jin did it with ease. This person can only be roped in. Now, even the 7 major sects can't deal with him. As long as we wait for him to grow, he may even step into the peak of the 9 regions. The Gu family's patriarch's eyes flickered. He secretly made up his mind that no matter what, he would stand on Chu Fumian's side. Not only because of Chu Fumian's current strength, but also because of Chu Fumian's terrifying growth. In just half a month, the Gu family's patriarch had witnessed Chu Fumian's growth with his own eyes. He did not even dare to think about how far Chu Fumian could go in the future. Therefore, no matter what, he had to stand on Chu Fumian's side. Gu family's patriarch, how is it? Chu Fumian sat on the chair, drinking tea by himself, and said with a smile, "Thank you, young Master Chu. Our Gu clan will never forget young Master Chu's kindness. As long as young Master Chu has any instructions in the future, as long as young Master Chu passes the word, our Gu clan will definitely go through water and tread on fire without hesitation." The Gu family's patriarch hurriedly said, almost kneeling down in front of Chu Fumian. Seeing the Gu family's patriarch's performance, Chu Fumian's heart was extremely satisfied. Although for the current Chu Fumian, there was indeed no need for the Gu family's help. But whether Chu Fumian needed it or not was one thing, whether they were willing to do it or not was another. Gu Jin, your current realm is still unstable. Once you stabilize it, it will be very easy to break through. Chu Fumian looked at Gu Jin and said, if Chu Fumian was willing, he could directly help Gu Jin break through to the 6th step of the life and death steps, the heart-refining realm. With the blood essence of 3 great ancestors in the heart-refining realm and a drop of Chu Fumian's blood essence, it was naturally easy to do all of this. Chu Fumian did not do so. He only laid a stable foundation for Gu Jin, although he was still a little inferior to those true monstrous geniuses. However, compared to most of the disciples of the 7 great sects, Gu Jin's aptitude was 1 level higher. It was not impossible for him to step into the Emperor realm in the future. Yes, Gu Jin is willing to follow young Master for the rest of his life. Gu Jin looked at Chu Fumian and directly knelt on the ground, saying respectfully, "All right, get up." Chu Fumian waved his hand and brought Gu Jin up. Then, he pointed at Gu Quan, who was already frightened, and said coldly, Chapter 9:35. Yes, sir. Gu Jin looked at Gu Quan, who had been sealed by his spiritual power and could not escape. Her eyes were full of killing intent. Whether it was the danger she encountered when she went to kill the blood sword demon Venerable, or this time, she was forced to marry young Master Jian. It was all Gu Quan's doing. Looking at Gu Quan, Gu Jin did not hesitate at all. She suddenly cut off Gu Quan's head with her sword, and then smashed Gu Quan's body with her palm. After doing all this, Chu Fumian felt that Gu Jin's aura had stabilized a lot. She was indescribably happy. All her opponents had died in her hands. For any martial artist, it was a joyous thing to die in her own hands. Gu family head, young Master Jian, should be here soon. Clean up and lure him in first. Then, I'll deal with him. Chu Fumian said calmly to Gu family head beside her. Yes. The head of the Gu family hurriedly cleaned up the mess at the scene. Now, he no longer had any doubts about Chu Fumian's strength. So what if he was an emperor? With Chu Fumian's current means that were comparable to Ancestor Wu, dealing with a few emperors would not be easy. 2 hours later, suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared in the sky above Ning, Zhou ancient city. Then, the space was directly torn apart. From his torn space, 2 figures slowly walked out. These 2 figures were an old man and a young man. The young man was handsome, but his eyes were as vicious as snakes and scorpions. These 2 people were young Master Jian Zongjie, and the person behind him, his master, Emperor Yan. The two of them directly descended. When the two of them arrived at Ningzhou ancient city, they did not pay attention to the restrictions at all. Instead, Emperor Yin directly took action and tore the restrictions at Ningzhou ancient city apart with a flick of his finger. This allowed the two of them to step into Ningzhou ancient city. Ningzhou ancient city. It's a pity that the Gu family occupied such a city. Jian Zongjia looked at the bustling Ningzhou ancient city below and sneered. This time, I'm going to marry the most outstanding girl in the Gu family. As a concubine, it's their great fortune. If the Gu family knows what's good for them, they should submit to me. I didn't expect the Gu family head to be so stubborn and still want to resist me. I'm sorry to trouble Master this time. A mere Gu family, who doesn't even have an emperor, dares to resist our Tianjin sect. Looks like anyone who dares to challenge our seven sects. The Smoke Emperor, who was standing beside Jian Zongjia, said coldly as he surveyed his surroundings. Today, I have personally come here. If the Gu family does not give me an explanation, this matter will not end here. Master, don't be angry. When we arrive at the Gu clan, we will naturally have a way to take over the Gu clan. The Gu clan occupies the ancient city of Ning province and is extremely wealthy. If we obtain the Gu clan's wealth, we will be able to strengthen our sect, Jian Zongjia said with a laugh. The Gu family doesn't deserve such an ancient city of Ningzhou. The two figures paused in the air for a moment before directly descending into the Gu clan. At the same time, from the Gu clan, an enormous pressure instantly enveloped them. The moment the countless disciples of the Gu family felt this pressure, they all knelt down on the ground and started trembling. A bunch of trash. Jian Zongjia glared at the disciples of the Gu family and roared. Gu family head, come out and meet us. Young Master Jian is here. You must be Senior Emperor Yin. Not long later, the head of the Gu clan flew out. Seeing the two of them, he respectfully opened his mouth and spoke. The two of you, please withdraw your oppressive might. My Gu family's disciples are weak and cannot withstand such oppressive might. Seeing the Gu family head being so respectful, Jian Zongjia and Emperor Yin retracted their pressure. When Jian Zongjia saw that only the head of the Gu clan had appeared, he could not help but frown as he spoke. Where's Miss Gu Jin? Why isn't she here? Jin knew about young Master Jian's arrival and hurriedly arranged a banquet in the palace. Please forgive her for not being able to receive you, the Gu family head said without batting an eyelid. Please come to one of the palaces. Our Gu clan has already prepared a banquet and is waiting for the two of you to take your seats. All right. Jian Zongjia and Emperor Yin nodded their heads and followed the Gu family head into the palace. In the palace, Chu Fengyin was already seated at the banquet table, drinking tea quietly. Even when he saw Jian Zongjia and the Smoke Emperor arrive, Chu Fengyin's expression did not change at all. He continued to drink his tea leisurely. Jian Zongjia and the Yin Emperor both looked at Chu Fengyin, who was an anomaly. Their eyes were filled with hostility. Jian Zongjia asked unhappily, Gu family head, who is this person? Why is there someone else at the banquet today? Oh, this is a young disciple of the Gu family. He is inexperienced and does not know who you are. Please forgive him. The head of the Gu clan slowly opened his mouth and said, Young Master Jian has been waiting for a long time. Please take a seat. Jian Zongjia and Emperor Yin nodded their heads when they heard this. They ignored Chu Fengyin and sat down at the banquet table. To the two of them, a mere ancestor of the god martial realm was no different from an ant. They would not take it to heart. Patriarch Gu, are you looking down on our heavenly sword sect by making all sorts of excuses to stop me? Or are you saying that I, Jian Zongjia, am not good enough for your daughter? Jian Zongjia suddenly looked at the head of the Gu clan after he sat down and suddenly opened his mouth to speak. This time around, my master has personally come not only for the sake of this marriage proposal. Instead, he has a matter that he wishes to discuss with the Gu family's head. May I know the reason why the Emperor Yin is here? The patriarch of the Gu clan pretended to be terrified as he hurriedly asked. The Yin Emperor spoke slowly. His voice was extremely old, but his tone was like an order. There was no difference between him and Lin Fan. It's simple. I want the Gu family to join our Tianjin sect. From now on, Ningzhou City will be under the control of our Tianjin sect. Now that the 6 demonic sects have suddenly appeared in the 9 regions, everyone is panicking. Many cities have been taken over by them. Although the ancient city of Ningzhou is not in danger yet, we have to take precautions. Therefore, all the cities will be controlled by the 7 great sects, including the ancient city of Ningzhou. Chapter 9:36. Emperor Yan's words didn't sound so harsh on the phone, but in reality, he wanted the Gu family to hand over the ancient city of Ningzhou. The ancient city of Ningzhou was the foundation of the Gu family. This was no different from a bandit's behavior. If the Gu family lost the ancient city of Ningzhou, the decline of the Gu family would be inevitable. The more the Gu family heard Emperor Yan's words, the colder the expression of the Gu family became. At this moment, it was extremely gloomy. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Chu Fengyan. Jian Zongjie and Emperor Yan were also looking at the Gu family's master with cold smiles, waiting for his answer. When did the people of the Tianjin sect become a bunch of bandits? It seems that after so many years, the nature of the Tianjin sect hasn't changed. They're still a bunch of bandits. In this silent place, a calm voice suddenly broke the silence. This voice didn't belong to the Gu family's master. It belonged to Chu Fengyan, who had been sitting at the side and drinking tea. Gu Jin stood beside Chu Fengyan, calmly serving Chu Fengyan tea. "Brat, who are you? A mere Gu clan disciple. What qualifications do you have to speak to us? Get out!" Jian Zongjie shouted angrily when he heard Chu Fengyan speak. In his opinion, Chu Fengyan was just a disciple of the Gu family. He didn't even have the right to talk to him. Jian Zongjie shouted angrily at the Gu family's master. Gu family's master, it seems that the Gu family really wants to become the enemy of the Tianjin sect. Let's throw this arrogant brat out first before we can continue our discussion. The Gu family's master remained silent when he heard Jian Zongjie's words. He didn't seem to want to teach Chu Fengyan a lesson. He just stood quietly at the side. At this moment, there was no need for him to speak. Become the enemy of the Tianjin sect? What does it matter? Chu Fengyan shook his head. The number of Sky Sword sect disciples that he had killed was almost uncountable. He had even killed a ruler of the Sky Sword sect. This sentence was said casually. It was as if he didn't care at all. Where did this arrogant brat come from? Speaking such arrogant words. How dare you say that you want to make an enemy out of the Tianjin sect in front of me? Very well. If I don't kill a few ants, people nowadays really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Jian Zongjie was furious when he heard Chu Fengyan's words. Since when did anyone dare to challenge the authority of the Tianjin sect, especially an ancestor of the divine martial layer? In his eyes, the ancestor of the divine martial layer was nothing more than an ant. Impudent. Kneel. The spiritual power in Jian Zongjie's body suddenly erupted, and he suddenly pressed his palm towards Chu Fengyan. This tyrannical force pressed on Chu Fengyan's body, forcing him to kneel on the ground. With his strength, he could be said to be invincible among warriors of the same realm. He simply didn't put Chu Fengyan in his eyes when dealing with a warrior of the divine martial realm. However, when this spiritual power bombarded Chu Fengyan, it seemed to suddenly disappear. Chu Fengyan drank his tea casually. When he finished drinking his tea, Chu Fengyan slowly stood up. His eyes flashed with coldness. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I think it's you who dares to be arrogant in front of me. Chu Fengyan suddenly laughed. He moved his hand slightly and scattered all of Jian Zongjie's spiritual power around him, bombarding Jian Zongjie's chest. Puff! Jian Zongjie's chest was bombarded on the spot. He took several steps back and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. His face was deathly pale. His eyes were full of disbelief. Kneel! Chu Fengyan waved his hand, and endless pressure enveloped Jian Zongjie's body. Suddenly, Jian Zongjie's internal organs were almost crushed by this terrifying pressure. Even his knees went soft. He couldn't bear the pressure and almost knelt on the ground. However, at this moment, A surge of spiritual power suddenly blocked in front of Jian Zongjia and dissolved his spiritual power. The person who made this move was Emperor Yin, who was sitting at the side. In an instant, he appeared in front of Jian Zongjia and blocked all of Chu Fengmian's spiritual power. Junior, aren't you a little too ruthless? How dare you make a move in front of me? It seems like you're an expert hire by the Gu family. Unfortunately, an ancestor who isn't even an emperor is just an ant no matter how strong he is. Emperor Yin looked at Chu Fengmian and said slowly. Even he couldn't see through Chu Fengmian's current strength. However, there wasn't a trace of destiny's aura on Chu Fengmian's body. This meant that Chu Fengmian had yet to step into the destiny realm and become an emperor. An ancestor, no matter how strong he was nothing in front of an emperor. Seeing that you have good potential, kneel down. As my slave, I can spare you this time. Emperor Yin looked at Chu Fengmian and said calmly. Hearing Emperor Yan's words, Chu Fengmian almost laughed out loud. It seemed like Jian Zongjia didn't learn to be so arrogant from others. This Emperor Yin was even more arrogant. Once he made a move, he asked people to kneel down and submit. An old man like you still dares to speak so arrogantly. Emperor Yin, today, I made you unable to become an emperor and turned you into a piece of trash. How dare you ask me to kneel down? Break! Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. The aura on his body rose rapidly. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and slapped Emperor Yin across the face. Chu Fengmian slapped Emperor Yin across the face. Slap! This crisp sound suddenly rang out in the palace. The Gu family's head and Gu Jin looked at this scene with their mouths agape. Emperor Yin was an emperor. Now, he had been slapped by Chu Fengmian. This was already a form of humiliation. As an emperor, he had an extremely high status in the Tianjian sect. When had the Emperor Yin, who was revered by tens of thousands, ever been humiliated like this? Little bastard, you're courting death. Emperor Yin was so angry that his hair stood on end. A rainbow-colored gourd suddenly appeared in his hand, and he opened it. From the rainbow-colored gourd, clouds of rainbow-colored smoke drifted out. This is the rainbow-colored god, slaying smoke. Any martial artist who is trapped in it will die without a doubt. However, little bastard, I won't let you die so quickly. I will torture you and make you beg for death. Emperor Yin roared angrily as he watched Chu Fengmian fall into the rainbow-colored god, slaying smoke. However, before he could finish his words, another shadow suddenly appeared from the rainbow-colored god, slaying smoke. Another slap was delivered. Chapter 9:37. The two slaps caused Emperor Yan's face to swell up like a pig's head. Emperor Yin wanted to gather his spiritual energy and recover quickly. However, no matter how hard he tried, the two slaps remained on his face and could not be healed. This humiliation was more painful than killing him. Little bastard, I want you dead. Emperor Yin roared crazily. His hair flew in the wind, and he spat out blood essence. He was burning his own blood essence. The burning blood essence merged into the seven-colored god, slaying smoke. He did not want to torture Chu Fengmian anymore. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. Only by killing Chu Fengmian now would he be able to vent his anger. As his blood essence burned, the seven-colored god, slaying smoke, spewed out from his seven-colored gourd and started to spin. Any existence in the seven-colored god, slaying smoke, would be crushed. What seven-colored god, slaying smoke? You're all trash. Old man, aren't you arrogant? Then I will destroy your cultivation base first. Let's see how arrogant you can be in the future. Chu Fengmian stood in the middle of the seven-colored god, slaying smoke, allowing the storm to wash over him. A cold smile appeared on his face. Chu Fengmian made his move. With a thought, the battle dragon's claw swept across the sky in front of Chu Fengmian. The seven-colored god, slaying smoke, was swept away by the battle dragon's claw. All of it turned into ashes. Even the seven-colored gourd started to vibrate violently under this power. Then it shattered. How is this possible? Master's seven-colored gourd was destroyed. How is this possible? Jian Zongjia's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets when he saw this scene. The seven-colored gourd was a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. A heaven-grade spiritual artifact was destroyed just like that. However, what happened next shocked him even more. Chu Fengmian broke through the seven-colored god, slaying smoke. His body flashed continuously, and in an instant, he was in front of Emperor Yan. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed him. Emperor Yan's neck was tightly gripped by Chu Fengmian. No matter how hard Emperor Yan struggled, he could not break free. How is this possible? The famous Emperor Yan was defeated just like that? The Gu family's patriarch and Gu Jin, who were standing at the side, were equally dumbfounded. Emperor Yan was the famous emperor of the Tianjin sect. He fought many people in the Tian sect and was very famous. The rainbow-colored gourd was even more difficult to deal with. Ordinary sovereigns would not dare to go against Emperor Yan. However, such a grand character had actually been defeated so miserably by Chu Fengmian. He had even been hung up and beaten by Chu Fengmian in the palm of his hand. Damn it! Damn it! Little bastard! Impossible! How can I be defeated by an ancestor? This is impossible. Emperor Yan was still struggling madly as Chu Fengmian grabbed his neck. He simply could not believe that he had been defeated by an ancestor. This was something that he had never imagined. I am invincible. Emperor to Chu to break Chu to be. Emperor he Chu. But in Chu Fengmian's eyes, this kind of struggle was futile and useless. You still want to struggle? Seems like you won't give up until I destroy your cultivation. Sky-devouring divine python, condense. Chu Fengmian pinched Emperor Yan. Suddenly, his mind moved. From Chu Fengmian's palm, a sky-devouring divine python condensed from sword intent. Under Chu Fengmian's control, the sky-devouring divine python drilled into Emperor Yan's body. It started to devour Emperor Yan's blood essence. Emperor Yan screamed in agony. Extracting his blood essence like this was as painful as extracting his soul. What Emperor Yan could not accept was that his realm was getting lower and lower as his blood essence was drained. Heavenly Fate Realm. Heart Refining Realm. Soon, Emperor Yan's realm returned to life and Death Realm and Divine Power Realm. Finally, he became an ordinary person without any spiritual power. His body had also aged. In such a state, the Smoke Emperor would definitely die within a few days. Chu Fengmian had purposely left a few drops of blood essence for Emperor Yan. Otherwise, Emperor Yan would be dead by now. However, it was a little boring to let Emperor Yan die so quickly. All right, you and your disciples should kneel down now. Chu Fengmian released Emperor Yan. Emperor Yan's body seemed to have fallen apart as he knelt down in front of Chu Fengmian. Jian Zongjia had also lost his backing. He could no longer resist Chu Fengmian's power. At the same time, he knelt down in front of Chu Fengmian. After doing all this, the Gu clan's clan head and Gu Jin finally regained their senses. Everything that had happened was simply beyond their imagination, especially the Gu family head, who was already considered a powerhouse in the domain land. However, in front of an emperor, he could only kneel down like an ant. Looking at an emperor being crippled by Chu Fengmian and kneeling on the ground, he still felt like he was in a dream. After killing these two people, the Tianjin sect will definitely investigate. The Gu family head looked at the two people kneeling on the ground and said worriedly, Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the Tianjin sect, but he was. It doesn't matter. If the Tianjin sect comes to investigate, they will only know that I killed them. It has nothing to do with the Gu family. Chu Fengmian said casually, I will take them outside and kill them. This was also the reason why Chu Fengmian didn't kill them now. Jian Zongjia and Emperor Yan had a high status in the Tianjin sect. Now that they were dead, the Tianjin sect would definitely investigate. With the Tianjin sect's methods, it wouldn't be difficult to reconstruct their deaths. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't kill them now. He was waiting for them to be taken outside and killed. This way, the Gu family wouldn't be implicated. After all, Chu Fengmian had already killed many Tianjin sect disciples. Two more wouldn't make a difference. Thank you, young master. The Gu family head hurriedly expressed his gratitude. It's nothing. By the way, does the ancient city of Ningzhou have any Emperor Blood essence? Chu Fengmian waved his hand. He suddenly thought of something and asked. Emperor Blood essence of a demon god is also available. If Chu Fengmian wanted the tree of God to grow, he would need a large amount of Emperor Blood essence. It would be troublesome for him to kill them alone. After all, emperors like Emperor Yin, who came to die, were in the minority. Most of the emperors were in the secret realms of the seven sects. No matter how bold Chu Fengmian was, he couldn't go to the seven sects to kill. There was another way to obtain Emperor Blood essence, and that was to buy it. Although Emperor Blood essence was extremely rare in the 9 zones, it wasn't impossible to buy it. For some martial artists, Emperor Blood essence was even more effective than heaven-level spirit pills. Chapter 938. Blood essence at the level of an emperor. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the head of the Gu family was shocked at first. Then he quickly said, most of the emperor's blood essence was left behind from the ancient times, and it's extremely rare in this era. Our Gu family only has 1 set. As for the big chambers of commerce in Ningzhou Ancient City, there should be some left, but not many, and the price is extremely high. Even for the Gu family, the emperor's blood essence was a treasure that could only be found by chance. The Gu family had been passed down for countless years, and they only had 1 set of emperor's blood essence, which was obtained by chance. Otherwise, they might not even have 1 set. Head of the Gu family, go and buy the emperor's blood essence from all the chambers of commerce in Ningzhou Ancient City. The price is not a problem. As long as they're willing to sell, buy them all. Chu Fengmian frowned. It seemed that the emperor's blood essence was indeed extremely rare, and it was difficult to find a few sets in the entire Ningzhou Ancient City. With the growth of the divine tree, 1 or 2 sets of emperor's blood essence would not help the divine tree much. It would need at least 10 or even dozens of sets of emperor's blood essence to make the divine tree grow again. However, even a mosquito's leg was meat. Since there was 1, Chu Fengmian would not let it go. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and a mountain of spirit stones appeared in front of him. What he lacked the least was wealth. Chu Fengmian could not even be bothered to calculate the price of these spiritual stones. He directly handed over all the spiritual stones that Chu Fengmian had condensed recently to the head of the Gu clan. Yes, the head of the Gu family had seen Chu Fengmian's shocking wealth before, and now that he saw Chu Fengmian's mountain of emperor-grade spirit stones, he was simply dumbfounded. All the chambers of commerce in Ningzhou Ancient City might not even be able to match this amount of wealth. The head of the Gu family hurriedly put away all the spirit stones and left in a flash. It seems that if I want to buy the emperor's blood essence, I'll have to go to a more prosperous city. However, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament is about to begin, so I don't have time to go to other places. Chu Fengmian sat on a chair, quietly drinking tea while thinking about what he would do next. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament would begin in 4 days, and Chu Fengmian did not have the energy to go to other places. This time, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was unusual. Even someone like the Demon Emperor was planning to participate. Chu Fengmian also wanted to see what was different about this 9 Region Genius battle. Young Master, are you planning to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Gu Jin, who was serving Chu Fengmian, suddenly spoke. Gu Jin also wishes to accompany Young Master. Oh, you also want to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? Chu Fengmian glanced at Gu Jin and smiled. Of course you can. With your current strength, as long as you don't encounter any monstrous geniuses in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, you won't be in any danger. Besides, you just made a breakthrough, so you should participate in some battles to consolidate your cultivation. Thank you, young master. Gu Jin, who was at the side, repeatedly expressed his gratitude. While the two of them were talking, a crack suddenly appeared in the space of the palace. A figure came out from inside. It was the head of the Gu family. The head of the Gu clan held a few jade boxes in his hand and walked out of the spatial realm. The various chambers of commerce in Ningzhou Ancient City have a total of 6 portions of Emperor Blood Essence. Including the Gu family's portion, there are 7 portions in total. Please take a look, young master. The head of the Gu family handed over the 7 jade boxes and said respectfully, Chu Fengyan waved his hand, and the 7 jade boxes were opened one by one. Balls of Emperor Blood Essence lay quietly inside. Many of these Emperor Blood Essences had been passed down from the ancient times. Tens of thousands of years had passed, but the power of the mask hadn't diminished. Moreover, there wasn't any smell of blood, only a faint fragrance. If there were no accidents, an Emperor Blood Essence could live for tens of thousands of years. Some powerful emperors could even live for tens of thousands of years. Their blood essence wouldn't be depleted even after tens of thousands of years. Only after 50,000 years, or even 100,000 years, would the spiritual power of the mask gradually dissipate. The spiritual power of these blood essences was at least 90% of its spiritual power. It was already considered good. Very good. Chu Fengyan sized it up and nodded with satisfaction. A vortex suddenly condensed in Chu Fengyan's palm and devoured the 7 portions of Emperor Blood Essences into the divine tree. After devouring 7 portions of Emperor Blood Essences in one go, even the divine tree couldn't devour them in one go. It could only slowly refine them. At least for half a month, the divine tree wouldn't need to devour the Emperor Blood Essences anymore. Let's refine them slowly. I wonder if this divine tree can really grow to be as powerful as the one in the desolate ancient sect. Chu Fengyan looked at the divine tree, devouring the Emperor Blood Essences without any joy. He thought of the divine tree in the desolate ancient sect. It was so powerful and terrifying. If one day the body in Chu Fengyan's body could also reach such a level, he would really be invincible. Even so, even if this divine tree was young, it still had great benefits for Chu Fengyan. Is there no Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god in Ningzhou ancient city? Chu Fengyan suddenly asked. A demon god's blood essence contained more power than an Emperor Blood Essence. In terms of bloodline power, how could a martial artist compare to a demon god? Since the divine tree could devour the Emperor Blood Essence, Chu Fengyan also wanted to see if it could devour the Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god. If it could, at least 1 portion of a demon god's blood essence would be more useful than 10 portions of Emperor Blood Essence. An Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god? This is something that only exists in legends. Our Ningzhou ancient city hasn't had an Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god for at least 10,000 years. The patriarch of the Gu family explained. Even these Emperor Blood Essences were accumulated over thousands of years. As for an Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god, I've never seen one in my life. It seemed that the Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god was countless times more difficult to find than an Emperor Blood Essence. Hearing the patriarch of the Gu family's words, Chu Fengyan understood. There weren't many demon gods in the 9 regions, let alone an Emperor Blood Essence of a demon god. It was said that most of the demon gods had gathered together. It wouldn't be easy to kill them and seize their blood essences. Therefore, even if there were some high-grade demon god blood essences, they were passed down from ancient times. Chapter 9:39. The only place where one can buy the blood essence of a demon god at the emperor level should be the city of 1,000 merchants. The Gu clan leader suddenly thought of something and said, "It said that there are auctions in the city of 1,000 merchants that sell emperor-level monster god blood essence." The city of 1,000 merchants. Chu Fengyan wasn't unfamiliar with this name. In terms of the most flourishing city in the 9 regions, it was surely the city of 1,000 merchants, and there was no suspense. Countless chambers of commerce in the 9 regions were based in the city of 1,000 merchants. Indeed, the only place where one could buy emperor-level monster god blood essence was the city of 1,000 merchants. The city of 1,000 merchants was in the opposite direction from the ancient gladiator arena. He could only participate in the 9 regions genius tournament before going to the city of 1,000 merchants. Chu Fengyan already had a plan. The most important thing was to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. Chu Fengyan came to the domain for the 9 regions genius tournament. It's time to set off. Chu Fengyan finished his tea and slowly stood up. I'm going to the ancient gladiator arena. I need to borrow the teleportation formation in the ancient city of Ning province. No problem. The young master asked me to follow. The Gu clan leader led the way, and Chu Fumian quickly arrived in front of a teleportation formation. The ancient city of Ning province wasn't huge in the domain, but it was an ancient city. That was why there were teleportation formations that led to various cities. Father, I also want to follow the young master to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Gu Jin said to the head of the Gu family from his side. Jiner, you want to go too? The Gu clan leader was slightly surprised and then asked, All right, with your current strength, it's indeed time for you to go out and gain experience. If you encounter any danger, you can tell me through the Jade Talisman. Chu Fengmian condensed a Jade Talisman from his palm and handed it to the Gu clan leader. Since he wanted the Gu clan leader to work for him, he naturally had to give him some benefits. Moreover, this Jade Talisman could be used to monitor the Gu clan leader at any time to see if he was disloyal. You can use the rest of the wealth to manage. I need a large amount of Emperor-level blood essence. You can help me collect it. I'll come back after the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. After saying all this, Chu Fengmian slowly stood up and stepped into the teleportation array. Gu Jin followed behind Chu Fengmian and stepped into the teleportation portal. Yes, young master. I will manage it well and wait for young master's return. The head of the Gu clan said respectfully as he opened the teleportation portal. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin disappeared from the ancient city of Ning province. From the teleportation array, he began to cross over continuously. Before long, Chu Fengmian felt dizzy. In front of him was a completely unfamiliar city. Young master, we're here. This is the ancient battle arena. Gu Jin said. Speaking of Chu Fengmian, it wasn't her first time here. Although she hadn't participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, she had watched it many times. Such a grand event was enough to attract countless cultivators from all over the 9 regions. Thus, Gu Jinshi and Chu Fengmian were much more familiar with it. Chu Fengmian brought Gu Jin here because he considered Gu Jin's familiarity with the region, which was why he brought her here. It was much more convenient for Chu Fengmian to bring Gu Jin along by himself. However, the ancient gladiator arena was different from what Chu Fengmian had imagined. In his imagination, the ancient gladiator arena should be an extremely desolate place. However, at a glance, this place should be in the land of a city that was several times larger than Ning province's ancient city. Countless cultivators were walking through the city. It was a hubbub of voices. It was definitely more prosperous than the ancient city of desolation. Even many of the martial artists on the road could be considered as geniuses in their own right. Now that the 9 Regions Genius Tournament had begun, it was enough to attract countless geniuses from all over the 9 regions. There were geniuses everywhere. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't help but be surprised. Gu Jin calmly explained when she saw the surprise in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Young master, this isn't the ancient battle arena. It's the martial imperial city. The ancient battle arena only opens the day before the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Cultivators only need to go through the teleportation array in the martial imperial city to enter. We're a few days early. We can find an inn to rest and recover our energy before participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Now that we're here early, there should be some rooms available. If we wait another day, we might not be able to find any. Chu Fengmian nodded after hearing Gu Jin's words. 4 days was a short period of time for a cultivator at Chu Fengmian's level. However, it would be too embarrassing to sleep on the streets. Let's find an inn first. Chu Fengmian looked at the martial imperial city. It was his first time coming to the martial imperial city. Originally, Chu Fengmian wanted to walk around. However, after hearing Gu Jin's words, he decided to find an inn first. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin slowly walked around the martial imperial city. Suddenly, they saw a huge pavilion in front of them. It was dozens of floors high. It towered into the sky and had an extraordinary aura. The words Sky-Reaching Pavilion were engraved on its surface. Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Chu Fengmian remembered that Sky-Reaching Pavilion was the property of Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Sky-Reaching Pavilion could be considered one of the biggest chambers of commerce in the entire 9 regions. As for the Sky Tower, it was in and owned by the Sky Tower. It was said that the Sky Tower was not only a place to cultivate, it was also a place where one could buy and sell spirit medicines, spirit weapons, information, and even live humans. Of course, one had to pay a sufficient amount of wealth. Sky-reaching Pavilion was extremely expensive. One had to be at least a life and death realm cultivator to afford it. Otherwise, ordinary cultivators wouldn't even be able to afford it for a day. The price for a day's stay would be at least several king-grade spirit stones, or even higher. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care about wealth at all. Let's go. We'll stay in Sky-reaching Pavilion. Chu Fengmian stepped into Sky-reaching Pavilion. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter, several women immediately came to welcome him. These women were all saints in the divine force realm. In some small sects, they could be considered experts. If they were in a remote place like Wushang Nation, they could even establish their own sect. Chapter 940. Most of the martial artists who could stay in Sky-reaching Pavilion were life and death experts. Therefore, the people serving them couldn't be too weak. Seeing Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin walk in, these women hurriedly welcomed them. These women's strength was ordinary, but their appearances were top-notch. Although they couldn't compare to Gu Jin, they were still pleasing to the eyes. Seniors, are you here to participate in the 9 regions genius battle? A young woman took the initiative to speak. The 9 regions genius battle will start in 4 days. Our Sky-reaching Pavilion's rooms have arrays that connect to the underground spirit veins. They're rich in spirit energy and can be used for your cultivation. Chu Fengmian nodded after hearing the woman's words. Give me 2 heaven-grade rooms. Chu Fengmian had stayed in Sky-reaching Pavilion in his previous life. Sky-reaching Pavilion's rooms were divided into heaven, earth, profound, and yellow grades. Although the lowest grade yellow grade rooms were much better than the other ends, Chu Fengmian didn't lack wealth and naturally wanted to enjoy the best. Moreover, Sky-reaching Pavilion's rooms had special arrays that could purify spirit energy. The higher the grade of the room, the better the effect of cultivation. Senior, are you planning to stay in a heaven-grade room? The woman was a little surprised, but she quickly reacted. We still have 2 heaven-rank rooms left in the Sky-reaching Pavilion. However, it costs 5 royal-grade spirit stones a day to use a heaven-rank room. The price of a heaven-tier room was 5 royal-tier spirit stones a day. Even the old ancestors would not be able to afford it. It could be said that those who could afford a heaven-grade room were either geniuses of the 7 great sects or emperors. Otherwise, they couldn't afford such a price. However, to Chu Fengmian, this amount of spirit stones was simply a drop in the ocean. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, condensing 40 emperor-grade spirit stones in front of him and flying them out. 2 heaven-grade rooms. Yes, I'll arrange it. The woman received the 40 emperor-grade spirit stones and hurriedly went to arrange it. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look at Chu Fengmian a few more times. She was secretly thinking about how to get closer to Chu Fengmian and curry favor with him. Those who could afford a heaven-grade room in Sky-reaching Pavilion were definitely famous figures in the region. Even the slightest bit of benefit would be more than what these saints had accumulated in their entire lives. Chu Fengmian didn't think much of it when he saw what she was thinking. These people didn't have high aptitudes, and they had chosen to come to Sky-piercing Tower for the sake of wealth. If they met some experts, they would take them back to marry and take them as concubines. It would be their good fortune. Chu Fengmian didn't have such thoughts. Although these women were good-looking, they still couldn't enter Chu Fengmian's eyes. As long as she worked obediently, Chu Fengmian could reward her with some wealth. Senior, it's done. Please follow me. The woman quickly returned with 2 jade talismans in her hands. The word heaven was engraved on each of the jade talismans. It seemed to be the spirit talisman of this heavenly tower. Chu Fengmian had just stood up. 5 martial artists, 3 men, and 2 women suddenly walked in from outside Clear Sky Tower. The auras of these 5 warriors were extremely terrifying. The weakest of them was at the 5th step of the life and death steps, the divine martial realm. The remaining 4 were all at the 6th step of the life and death steps, the heart refining realm. Moreover, the aura of each of them was much stronger than that of other martial artists of the same level. The arrival of this group of people attracted the attention of all the martial artists in Clear Sky Tower. This group of trash overestimated themselves. They all came to participate in the 9 regions genius battle. The martial imperial city is going to be crowded to death. One of the men walked up to Heavenly Tower. When he saw that the hall was filled with people, he spoke with dissatisfaction. His words caused many cultivators in the hall to show anger on their faces. The martial artists who dared to participate in the 9 regions genius battle were all famous geniuses, who didn't have some pride. However, when these warriors saw the martial god statue on the back of the man's clothes, the anger in their hearts was forcefully suppressed. Wearing the martial god statue, he was a disciple of the sage monarch sect. Even if they were arrogant, they didn't dare to compete with the disciples of the 7 great sections. They hurriedly looked away, not daring to look again. A group of trash. The man from the sage monarch sect saw the reaction of the surrounding martial artists, and the arrogance on his face became thicker. He proudly pointed at the receptionists. "What are you doing? Hurry up and find 2 heaven-grade rooms." "Seniors, the heaven-grade rooms are full." A receptionist hurriedly walked over and cautiously asked, "What? They're full?" The man from the sage monarch sect showed some dissatisfaction. "It seems that there are no more rooms. Let's go to another place." A female disciple from the sage monarch sect said. "Another place?" The man from the sage monarch sect's eyes flashed as he looked around the hall. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Chu Fengyan. He didn't look at Chu Fengyan, but at the 2 jade talismans in the hands of the receptionist beside Chu Fengyan. "Wait here. I'll go back," the man from the sage monarch sect said as he walked towards Chu Fengyan. In a few steps, he arrived in front of Chu Fengyan. "Boy, are these 2 heaven-grade rooms yours? Hand them over." The man from the sage monarch sect looked at Chu Fengyan. When he saw that Chu Fengyan was in the divine martial realm, his eyes were filled with disdain. "You can go to another room." His words were extremely overbearing, as if he was giving an order to Chu Fengyan. Oh no, this boy is being targeted by the sage monarch sect. The people from the sage monarch sect are all arrogant. Looks like this boy is going to suffer. But this guy can afford to stay in a heaven-grade room. He should be someone with some status. So what? Even if he has some status, he can't compete with the 7 major sections. The martial artist looked at Chu Fengyan and started to discuss. Hearing the discussion, the man from the sage monarch sect looked even more proud. However, when he saw that Chu Fengyan didn't reply, his eyes turned cold. "Boy, I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? All right, here's a royal grade spirit stone. Quickly give up your room. Here's a royal grade spirit stone as compensation. Get out of my sight." The man from the sage monarch sect suddenly took out a royal grade spirit stone and threw it at Chu Fengyan as if he was giving alms. A royal grade spirit stone couldn't even afford to stay in a heaven grade room. Chapter 941. Get lost. Chu Fengyan looked at the man from the Saint King's sect, and his eyes flashed. He waved his hand, and the royal grade spiritual stone was smashed into smithereens. It seemed that Chu Fengyan could not live in peace. More and more people were courting death. "Boy, how dare you break my spiritual stone?" Seeing that Chu Fengyan did not take the spiritual stone and instead smashed it, the man from the Holy King's sect was furious. "It seems that you don't know who we are. Let me tell you, boy, we are from the Holy King's sect. We are here on behalf of the Holy King's sect." "Why? Do you want to be our enemy?" The man from the Holy King's sect looked at Chu Fengyan and said arrogantly, "Kneel down now and hand over the 2 heaven-level rooms. Then we will forgive your sins. Otherwise, no matter who you are, you will be hunted down by the Holy King's sect." "Senior." The girl standing beside Chu Fengyan trembled when she heard the man from the Holy King's sect. The Holy King's sect was a colossus that she could not afford to offend. She was in a dilemma. "Oh, hunted down by the Holy King's sect? You're just a disciple of the Holy King's sect. Who do you think you are? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Are you going to get lost? Or do you want me to throw you out?" Chu Fengyan laughed when he saw the man's threat. It seemed that among the 7 sects, the Sage Monarch sect was the most arrogant. In the eastern region, the Sage Monarch sect was the absolute ruler. That was why all the disciples of the sage monarch sect were so arrogant. Chu Fengmian could not care less about the arrogance of the Holy King sect disciples. However, if they dared to be arrogant in front of him, they were courting death. What? You want me to get lost? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the man from the Holy King sect laughed crazily, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Boy, who do you think you are? How dare you speak so arrogantly? It seems that I, Wu Kuang, have been in the eastern region for too long. How dare you challenge me? Wu Kuang. He is the disciple of a grand elder of the Holy King sect. He used to be the top of the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region. It's that fierce man. Hearing the name Wu Kuang, some martial artists realized the identity of the man in front of them. Wu Kuang, number 1 on the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region? I've never heard of it. I'll give you 3 more seconds to scram. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Fine, fine. Brat, you're courting death, so don't blame me. Scram. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Wu Kuang could no longer hold himself back and suddenly attacked. From his body, spiritual power rose crazily, and martial arts condensed in his body. Suddenly, he grabbed at Chu Fengmian. It went straight for Chu Fengmian's chest. The power contained in this claw was extremely vicious. If anyone was caught by this claw, even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. His first move was so ruthless. How ruthless! This brat is going to suffer. If he had known earlier, he would have handed over the room obediently. Many surrounding warriors sighed and shook their heads as they looked at Chu Fengmian. The 9 zones had always revered martial arts, and the only thing that mattered was strength. Die, brat! Wu Kuang's face was ferocious. As he roared, his claw was already close to Chu Fengmian's chest. But the moment his claw was close to Chu Fengmian's chest, it suddenly stopped, unable to move forward. Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked and grabbed Wu Kuang's wrist tightly, making it impossible for Wu Kuang's hand to move. What? Wu Kuang was stopped. Seeing Wu Kuang's hand being held by Chu Fengmian, the surrounding warriors were in disbelief, their eyes wide open. They had all heard of Wu Kuang's strength. He was ranked first on the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region. Among the geniuses of the 7 sects, he was considered a top figure. In their opinion, with Wu Kuang's attack, even if Chu Fengmian didn't die, he would be seriously injured. As for Chu Fengmian being able to withstand it, it was not within their expectations. Oh, the other Sage King sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian with slight surprise. They didn't expect this either. After being arrogant for so long, is this all you've got? Since you won't scram, I'll make you scram. Chu Fengmian sneered, and his hand suddenly tightened. Wu Kuang's body was suddenly lifted up and thrown out of the sky connecting tower. Boom! Outside sky reaching tower, there were still many warriors watching the show, but suddenly they all hurriedly dispersed. Wu Kuang's body was thrown out of sky reaching tower, and he took a few steps back before stabilizing himself. What's going on? What happened? Someone was thrown out of sky reaching tower? In Martial Imperial City, many warriors saw the commotion and gathered around to watch the show. This is Wu Kuang. Wu Kuang was thrown out. Some of the more knowledgeable warriors recognized Wu Kuang at a glance, and their eyes were filled with surprise. As a genius of the 7 sects, Wu Kuang was actually thrown out. Although this was not enough to hurt Wu Kuang's nerves and bones, these discussions caused his expression to turn ugly. As a genius of the 7 sects, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Damn it, kid, looks like I've underestimated you. Wu Kuang looked at Chu Fengmian with a ferocious expression, and his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. He was extremely angry. Boom! Behind Wu Kuang, the shadow of a martial god slowly condensed, and then the martial god's shadow merged with Wu Kuang's body. It looked as if he was the martial god himself. Spiritual power burst forth from his body, forcing the surrounding crowd to disperse. Stop! No fighting in sky reaching tower. At this moment, a few figures suddenly appeared, and they were the stewards of sky reaching tower. They felt the fluctuation of sky reaching tower's spiritual energy and rushed over, wanting to stop the fight. Get out of my way, a bunch of trash. How dare you stop me? Wu Kuang glanced at the stewards of sky-piercing tower. Suddenly, his spiritual energy erupted, and he sent a palm strike towards them. Slap! The stewards of sky-connecting tower were all patriarchs in the heart-tempering realm. However, their auras were far inferior to Wu Kuang's. Chapter 942. The steward of sky-reaching tower was sent flying by the slap. His expression was ugly. The strength of these stewards was far from comparable to a true expert. Generally speaking, as long as one revealed their identity, most martial artists would show some respect to sky-reaching tower. However, Wu Kuang did not care and sent the steward flying with a slap. This slap caused the other stewards of the Heavenspan Pavilion to retreat one after another. Wu Kuang was a genius with an extremely high status in the Sage Monarch sect. How could he endure such humiliation? He did not even care about sky-reaching tower. What should we do? We can't stop Wu Kuang. Quickly report this to the great venerables. The stewards hurriedly began to discuss. No matter what, this was a conflict in sky-reaching tower. They had to be responsible for it. Brat, you have completely enraged me. No matter who you are or what your identity is, you must die today. Kneel down and accept your death. Wu Kuang took a step forward, and his aura surged crazily. This aura was completely different from before. The martial god's shadow condensed behind his back and merged with his body. Martial god true body. This is the secret technique of the Sage Monarch sect. Martial god true body. Gu Jin, who was standing beside Chu Fengyan, quickly reminded him. The martial god true body was the secret technique of the Sage Monarch sect. Now that Wu Kuang had used it without any hesitation, it was enough to show how angry he was. He was willing to sacrifice everything to kill Chu Fengyan. The martial artists standing in the lobby of sky-reaching tower retreated. They knew how terrifying the martial god true body was. Anyone who was affected by it would lose a layer of skin, even if they did not die. Invincible. Wu Kuang took a step forward and rushed in front of Chu Fengyan. Suddenly, he threw a punch. A terrifying force swept through the entire lobby of sky-reaching tower, trying to engulf everyone. Chu Fengyan stood in place and watched Wu Kuang's punch coming. He did not even move. He had no intention of dodging. What is this brat trying to do? He's not dodging. Is he crazy? Seeing Chu Fengyan's actions, the surrounding warriors didn't understand what Chu Fengyan was trying to do. If he didn't block such a terrifying punch, it would be no different from courting death. But in the next moment, countless warriors' eyes were filled with shock. Chu Fengyan slowly moved when the fist was about to hit him. He also clenched his fist and punched out. Meet force with force. He chose to fight with the Sage Monarch sect disciples. The most powerful thing about the disciples of the Holy King sect was their physical strength. The true body of the martial god had merged with the supreme martial path to create an extremely powerful body. This was the true essence of the martial god true body. But now, Chu Fengyan actually chose to take it head-on. Invincible in the world. What a boastful claim. Chu Fengyan let out a hearty laugh as he threw out a punch. Two fist winds suddenly collided in the air. These fist winds caused many of the surrounding warriors to be sent flying. Even some of the patriarchs wouldn't be able to withstand the shock waves from the collision, let alone the heart of the collision. Who's the winner? All eyes were on the heart of the collision. They were all looking forward to the result of the collision. In the next moment, a figure flew out from the heart of the collision. This figure wasn't Chu Fengyan, but Wu Kuang. Wu Kuang flew out and crashed into a wall. Only then did his body stop. The crowd noticed that Wu Kuang's body was filled with countless tiny cracks. Although these cracks were small, they couldn't escape the eyes of the warriors. The true body of the martial god has been shattered. Wu Kuang's true body of the martial god has been shattered by a single punch. Oh my god, what kind of power is this? The true body of the martial god of the Holy King sect disciples was as tough as a spiritual weapon. Wu Kuang was a genius among the Holy King sect disciples. His body was almost as tough as a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. But now, a single punch from Chu Fengyan had caused his true body of the martial god to crack. A single punch was enough to shatter a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. What kind of power was this? This was a power that only an emperor could possess. Wuquang. The remaining 4 Holy King sect disciples hurried over. When they saw Wuquang's shattered true body of the martial god, their faces darkened. The true body of the Holy King sect's true body of the Holy King sect could be said to be the foundation of their strength. It was also their trump card. Once it was shattered, they would have to pay a hefty price to recover it. Your Excellency, you've gone too far. One of the Holy King sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "Too far? If it weren't for Heavenspan Tower's face, I would have killed him already." Chu Fengmian laughed and pointed at the disciples of the Sage Monarch sect. "Get lost. If you don't, you'll end up like trash." You. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the Holy King sect disciples' faces turned green and red. They were the Holy King sect disciples and had never been scolded like this before. It was a great humiliation indeed. The disciples of the Sage Monarch sect, no matter where they were in the 9 zones, were respected and respected. Being pointed at and scolded like this was something that had never happened before. When the Sage Monarch sect disciples heard Chu Fengmian's words, they could not wait to rush over and fight him to the death. But no one dared to. Wuquang had been defeated by Chu Fengmian in a single move. Their strength was on par with Wuquang's at best. Fighting with Chu Fengmian was no different from courting death. Good. We'll remember your words today. When a 9 regions genius battle comes, you'll die. A Holy King sect disciple shouted at Chu Fengmian. Finally, he turned his head and said reluctantly, "Let's go." The Sage King sect disciples did not even look back as they left. Ridiculous. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a disdainful smile. The last words of the Sage Monarch sect disciples were just trying to save face. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, these guys were like ants. The outcome of the 9 regions genius battle would be the same in a few days. These Holy King sect disciples were nothing in Chu Fengmian's eyes. If not for the fact that they were in Sky Reaching Tower, which was a sensitive place, their every move would be monitored by countless people. Chapter 943. Where did this ferocious man come from? Wuquang was actually unable to fight back against him. Seeing Chu Fengmian and the people from the Holy King sect leave, the martial artists of Sky Reaching Tower were finally relieved. During the conflict, they could only tremble in fear. It was only after everyone had left that they could finally catch their breath. Wuquang's strength isn't the best in this year's competition, but he's still a top figure. If he's lucky, he might even enter the top 100. I didn't expect him to lose so badly. And this person is only in the divine martial realm. He's 1 level lower than Wuquang, but he's so strong. There was a huge gap between each level of the life and death steps. Many of the geniuses from the 7 major sects could only cross 1 level. The disciples of the 7 major sects were all geniuses. They were invincible in the same level. Chu Fengmian was only in the divine martial realm, but he could easily defeat Wuquang. This was what surprised everyone the most. Could it be that this person is hiding his level? With his strength, he's at least an ancestor in the heart-refining realm, or an emperor who's deliberately hiding his level. One of the martial artists speculated, disagreeing with Lin Fan's words. As soon as he finished speaking, a martial artist next to him said disdainfully, "How is that possible? If he's an emperor, how could Wuquang be so arrogant? In my opinion, this person isn't from the domain, but a hidden genius from the other domains. The 9 domains are so big that any kind of genius can be born. Let's wait and see. When the martial competition begins, this person will definitely stand out." After a long discussion, the group of martial artists gradually dispersed. Today's matter became a topic of conversation, and it gradually spread from the martial imperial city. Mysterious geniuses were always enough to attract people's attention. On the other side, Chu Fengmian didn't know that his matter had caused a commotion. He and Luo, she followed the woman all the way to the interior of Sky Reaching Tower. From the outside, Sky Reaching Tower looked like it was only a few dozen stories high, but inside, there was another world. The interior of Heavenly Tower was simply divided into small worlds. Each room was an independent space. Even an emperor couldn't pry into it. Soon, the two of them arrived at the deepest part of the heavenly connecting tower, arriving at space. This room was basically a courtyard. It was an extremely large courtyard. There were mountains, rivers, and even an orchard. Seniors, you can rest as much as you want. When the Nine Regions Genius Battle is about to begin, I'll call you too. The woman said respectfully. If you want to buy spiritual herbs or information, feel free to call me over. You've done well. Chu Fengmian nodded. With a thought, a royal Great Spirit stone appeared in his hand, and he tossed it to the woman. Thank you, senior. The woman was excited. She took the royal Great Spirit stone and quickly expressed her gratitude. The royal spiritual emperor is worth a fortune, and it was worth it. Chu Fengmian had never been a stingy person. Chu Fengmian was very satisfied that the woman had not said anything when she had been threatened by Wu Quan. After sending the woman away, Chu Fengmian stepped into the courtyard. Gu Jin, on the other hand, began to cultivate in another courtyard beside Chu Fengmian. Gu Jin had just made a breakthrough. These few days were enough for her to consolidate her cultivation and prepare for the Nine Regions Genius Battle. As for Chu Fengmian, he didn't need to prepare. Although he had just made a move, Chu Fengmian had the divine pulse. He could recover to his peak state at any moment. He didn't need to prepare for a few days in advance. The rooms in Sky Reaching Tower are really luxurious. The spiritual energy here is as rich as the 7 great sects' holy lands. Chu Fengmian sat on a stone bench in the courtyard, looking at a pond beside him. The pond wasn't water, but water condensed from extremely pure spiritual energy. The entire courtyard was filled with spiritual energy. For ordinary cultivators, it was enough for them to recover their spiritual energy. If they stayed in the courtyard for a long time, their cultivation speed would be much faster. Chu Fengmian also felt a trace of chaotic energy from the spiritual energy. The source of this spiritual energy was an ancient spiritual spring that contained the aura of chaos. The law of chaos was mysterious and unfathomable. Countless emperors and even supreme ancestors tried to comprehend it. It was said that everything in the world was born from chaotic energy. The primal chaos represented the origin of everything. Whoever could comprehend the primal chaos, regardless of whether it was martial skills or control of spiritual power, would increase exponentially. He didn't expect Sky Reaching Tower to be so generous as to own an ancient spiritual spring that contained chaotic energy. Chu Fengmian slowly absorbed the chaotic energy contained in the spiritual energy. His body relaxed a lot, and even his mind became very clear. Under the stimulation of the chaotic energy, the Nine Regions sword technique in Chu Fengmian's mind began to change. It began to change in a more perfect direction. Chu Fengmian sat on the stone bench and slowly closed his eyes. An ancient book condensed in front of him. The words Nine Regions appeared in this ancient book. This ancient book was the condensation of Chu Fengmian's Nine Regions sword technique. When the ancient book was opened, one could see the countless sword techniques that Chu Fengmian had integrated into it. Many of these sword techniques were enough to make a sword sect like the Tianjin sect go crazy. Now, they were all integrated into the Nine Regions sword technique. I thought that the Nine Regions sword technique had begun to reach perfection, but now it seems that it's still full of holes and loopholes. It seems that it's easier said than done to create a perfect sword technique. Chu Fengmian observed the Nine Regions sword technique and couldn't help but sigh. Chu Fengmian once thought that his Nine Regions sword technique was about to reach perfection. However, this time, as Chu Fengmian's strength increased, he looked at the Nine Regions sword technique again and found that it still had many shortcomings. As his strength increased, Chu Fengmian's vision became wider and wider. Naturally, he could see many shortcomings of the Nine Regions sword technique. This was something that Chu Fengmian couldn't see before. However, this was a good thing. Only by constantly seeing the shortcomings could Chu Fengmian perfect the Nine Regions sword technique and make it more and more perfect. Chu Fengmian condensed his spiritual energy and slowly made up for the shortcomings of the Nine Regions sword technique. In his eyes, a figure was constantly performing countless sword techniques and practicing them. Chapter 944. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes, and there was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. At the end of the phone, the chaotic aura in this courtyard was actually quite dense. It was enough for some ancestors or even emperors to practice martial arts and comprehend the laws. However, for a glutton like Chu Fengmian, the nine-realm swordsmanship that he wanted to practice was too complicated. How complicated was the nine-realm swordsmanship that fused with countless swordsmanship in the world? It could be said that there was no swordsmanship, martial arts, or technique in the entire nine realms that was comparable to his. The chaotic aura in this courtyard was not even enough to support 1% of Chu Fengmian's practice of the nine-realm swordsmanship. It was exhausted. It would take at least a few days for the chaotic aura to fill the courtyard. Chu Fengmian could not afford to wait. I originally wanted to use this chaotic aura to practice the nine realms swordsmanship to make up for my shortcomings. Chu Fengmian was a little helpless. An ancient spirit spring with chaotic aura was extremely rare in the entire nine realms. Chu Fengmian had obtained countless treasures, but he had never found one. It could only be considered a pleasant surprise to encounter one in sky-reaching tower, but it was still not enough. However, Chu Fengmian would not be willing to give up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The direction of this spiritual power seems to be traceable. Chu Fengmian gradually sensed where the spiritual power came from, even though it was hidden. Although it was hidden, it still could not be hidden from Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense moved and gradually felt the direction of the spiritual power. Following the direction of the spiritual power, Chu Fengmian might find the spirit spring of sky-reaching tower. Let's go and explore first. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he made a decision. Such an opportunity was once in a lifetime. Even though there were many experts in sky-reaching tower, Chu Fengmian was very careful. Not everyone was able to find his traces. Chu Fengmian quietly condensed a sword intent and turned it into a small, godly devouring python. Following Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense, it directly drilled into a restriction. This restriction was the passage that connected the courtyard to the spirit spring. Although it was not hidden, it was still detected by Chu Fengmian. His godly devouring python carefully and slowly drilled into the restriction. He did not know how long he had been walking. Suddenly, some gray fog appeared in front of them. What a powerful restriction! Chu Fengmian observed a restriction that suddenly appeared in front of him. The restriction was still very new. It appeared that it had been set up for less than 10 years. The power contained within the mask was extremely terrifying. It was stronger than any power Chu Fengmian had ever seen. What a big deal! This restriction is set up by at least 5 old ancestors who are in the immortal realm. Chu Fengmian carefully observed for a moment and then gasped in shock. The forbidding aura was set up by 5 progenitors of the supreme realm. Ancestor Wu was the absolute pinnacle even among the 7 sects. A force that could take out 5 supreme ancestors was definitely not inferior to the 7 major sections. They actually set up such a powerful restriction. What kind of secret is this spirit spring hiding? The more powerful the restriction was, the more secretive the secret behind the restriction was. Chu Fengmian observed the divine, sky-devouring python carefully. Then, he noticed that it was slowly approaching him. Then, he gradually drilled through the edge of the restriction. He penetrated through the layer of restriction without triggering it. The restriction was only to block the spiritual power. Once it sensed the spiritual power, it would be activated and burst out. Chu Fengmian's divine, sky-devouring python was condensed by sword essence. Therefore, although the restriction was powerful, the divine, sky-devouring python was unobstructed. Even Ancestor Wu, who had set up the restriction, did not expect that the sword essence would sneak in. However, in the entire 9 regions, except for Chu Fengmian, it was hard to say whether there was anyone else who could achieve this kind of sword essence manifestation. After all, this was a level that countless Sword Dao Grandmasters could not achieve even in their dreams. The divine, sky-devouring python went through the restriction without any obstruction. This is underground? There's actually such a huge spirit spring hidden under the martial imperial city. Chu Fengyan suddenly realized that the divine, sky-devouring python had followed him all the way to the underground of the martial imperial city. At the depth of thousands of meters underground, there was a huge spirit spring. My God, what a huge spirit spring this is! Chu Fengyan's consciousness merged with the divine, sky-devouring python and came all the way to the underground spirit spring of the martial imperial city. When he opened his eyes, there was endless gray fog in front of him. This gray fog was none other than the color of the primal chaos. Chu Fengyan scanned the underground spirit spring with his spiritual consciousness. He could not see the end of it. It was extremely huge. The 9 regions actually have such a huge spirit spring? Chu Fengyan's expression was extremely shocked. In his previous life, he had seen countless spirit springs. Chu Fengyan had even seen the spirit springs of the 7 great sects. However, the spirit spring under the martial imperial city was much bigger than the spirit springs of the 7 great sects. This spirit spring was much bigger than all the known spirit springs in the 9 regions. Only then did Chu Fengyan realize what kind of place he had barged into. No one in the 9 regions knew this shocking secret. If the news that there was such a huge spiritual spring under the martial imperial city was spread out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. It was enough to trigger a great war in the 9 regions. The 7 great sects could shed all pretenses and start a chaotic war. Whoever could obtain such a huge spirit spring would be able to establish a force that surpassed the 7 great sects. Chu Fengyan nervously observed every movement around him. Such a spirit spring should not be unguarded. Chu Fengyan carefully observed his surroundings. When he sensed that there was no abnormality, Chu Fengyan finally let out a sigh of relief. Chu Fengyan's divine, sky-devouring python was formed by sword intent. It was extremely weak. In this spirit spring, it was almost equivalent to a drop of water in the ocean. Once it merged with the spirit spring, it would be very difficult to detect. The more Chu Fengyan used his spiritual consciousness to observe the spirit spring, the more he could feel the vastness of this spirit spring. Even his heart did not want to take this spirit spring for himself. If Chu Fengyan could take this spirit spring for himself, he could almost break through to the 9th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm, and become an ancestor. Chapter 945. The spiritual energy contained in the spiritual spring was simply unimaginable. It was impossible to calculate how much spiritual energy there was. No matter how big the appetite of the Dragon War skill was, it was enough to fill him up. Even a saint or a supreme ancestor, regardless of their status, would not be able to resist the urge to take the spiritual spring for themselves. However, Chu Fengyan was clear that the spiritual spring was not something that he could take. Not to mention the enormous size of the spiritual spring, it was impossible for Chu Fengyan to take it. The restriction on the spiritual spring was proof that someone had already discovered the spiritual spring. There were at least 5 supreme ancestors in the immortal realm guarding it. Any supreme ancestor in the immortal realm could easily kill Chu Fengyan. Not to mention 5 supreme ancestors. The idea of taking the spiritual spring could only be hidden in the bottom of Chu Fengyan's heart. When Chu Fengyan became stronger in the future, he might have a chance. At least for now, it was something that was far from possible. However, since he was already here, he naturally wouldn't come here for nothing. It was impossible for him to take away the spiritual spring directly. However, it was still possible to devour some of the chaotic aura. The spiritual spring was so huge that it would not be easy for the experts who were monitoring the spiritual spring to notice it, as long as he did not make too much noise. The chaotic aura was just enough to help Chu Fengyan practice his swordsmanship. The sky-devouring divine python slowly opened its mouth and devoured the spiritual energy of the spiritual spring. On the other side, Chu Fengyan sat in the courtyard. He could feel that a steady stream of spiritual energy had begun to enter his body. The chaotic aura made Chu Fengyan feel refreshed. He observed the 9 regions' swordsmanship again and found several shortcomings. Swordsmanship practice. 9 figures condensed in front of Chu Fengmian. These 9 figures were practicing the 9 regions' swordsmanship over and over again. There would be a slight difference in each practice. Gradually, it began to be perfected and made up for each of its shortcomings. Boom! Boom! Gusts of wind constantly blew in the courtyard. This was the fluctuation of spiritual energy that appeared when Chu Fengmian was practicing his swordsmanship. The cracks on the ancient book in front of Chu Fengmian began to be repaired. This represented the continuous improvement of the 9 regions' swordsmanship. This was a chaotic aura that could be used to practice swordsmanship. The chaotic aura was extremely rare. It could only be found in some spiritual springs. This time, Chu Fengmian found a chaotic aura by accident. In this case, Chu Fengmian would not be polite. The sky-devouring divine python was paying attention to the experts in the underground spiritual spring to prevent those experts from discovering it. As long as Chu Fengmian had enough primal chaos aura, his 9-region swordsmanship would reach perfection temporarily and reach the limit of his current realm. After a full day, in the courtyard, the 9 figures to Chu Fengmian divine python, Chu Fengmian. They couldn't sense any powerful sword domain from Chu Fengmian's body, but when they looked at Chu Fengmian's eyes, just his gaze alone was extremely sharp. His sword was completely hidden, making it impossible for Chu Fengmian to sense any sword will. It was even impossible to recognize Chu Fengmian's identity as a swordsman. This was the state in which the 9-realm sword art was beginning to converge. As the 9-realm sword art continued to be perfected, his sword intent also gradually converged. Such a 9-realm sword technique was even more terrifying. If Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship were to suddenly erupt, the 9-realm sword technique would be even more terrifying. Not to mention an emperor, even if a half-step supreme great ancestor came, it would be extremely troublesome. There are still 3 days until the 9 regions genius battle. Since I've already finished practicing the 9 regions sword technique, I might as well use this time to take a closer look at the spirit spring and see what's inside. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Chu Fengmian's consciousness entered the heaven-devouring divine python's territory once again after dispersing the ancient book of the 9 regions sword technique. Gradually, they sneaked into the spirit spring. The primal chaos chi that Chu Fengmian devoured was nothing compared to the primal chaos chi in the spirit spring. As far as the eye could see, the entire spirit spring was still in chaos. Chu Fengmian pushed his spiritual sense to the extreme and barely managed to peel away the chaos in front of him. He began to constantly search. I don't believe that there's no end to the spirit spring. The heaven-devouring divine python formed by Chu Fengmian's sword intent kept moving through the spirit spring. Chu Fengmian wanted to figure out just how big this spirit spring was. However, even after several hours, Chu Fengmian still hadn't found the end. It was as if this spirit spring was infinitely huge, with no end in sight. It was many times bigger than what Chu Fengmian had imagined. Another 6 hours passed. Chu Fengmian's heaven-devouring divine python had been exploring the spirit spring for 12 hours. Just as Chu Fengmian was about to give up, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt that the primal chaos chi in the surroundings seemed to have thinned out a lot. Now that the heaven-devouring divine python was close to the heart of the spirit spring, the primal chaos chi should be denser. But now it had become much thinner. Chu Fengmian also felt that the primal chaos chi seemed to be directly absorbed by a force. It seems that something is devouring the primal chaos chi. Seeing this change, Chu Fengmian suddenly became alert. In the spirit spring, Chu Fengmian hadn't found anything. Now, there was finally some abnormality. How could Chu Fengmian not be excited? Is there an expert cultivating in the spirit spring? Or is there something hidden in the spirit spring? Chu Fengmian thought secretly. At the same time, the heaven-devouring divine python's speed gradually slowed down and began to hide in the spirit spring. After all, the heaven-devouring divine python was formed by sword intent. Once it really hid, even some supreme ancestors couldn't easily detect it. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's heart was already prepared to encounter an accident. Once he encountered an expert of the spirit spring, Chu Fumian would directly disperse the heaven-devouring divine python, so as not to attract trouble. Chapter 946. The divine sky-devouring python followed the flow of the chaotic aura all the way to the core of the spiritual spring. Chu Fumian felt that this should be the heart of the spiritual spring. However, the chaotic aura that should have been gathered was completely devoured by this force. Boom! All of a sudden, the power appeared once again and sucked everything in the surroundings into it. Even the divine, sky-devouring python formed by Chu Fumian's sword was pulled in by this force, along with the surrounding spiritual energy and chaotic aura. This sudden change was simply beyond Chu Fumian's expectation. Moreover, this force was too terrifying. The divine, sky-devouring python was directly sucked into the deepest part of the spiritual spring until it suddenly hit a hard object and stopped. Chu Fumian finally felt relieved when he felt that the divine, sky-devouring python was not swallowed by this force. He had used countless methods to sneak the divine, sky-devouring python into the spiritual spring. This time, Chu Fumian was able to sneak into the spiritual spring without the surveillance of the sky-reaching tower's experts. However, it would be hard to say the next time. Chu Fumian slowly breathed a sigh of relief and then looked around. Now, the divine sky-devouring python seemed to have been pulled into a very special area. In this humiliation, there was no spiritual energy or chaotic aura. No, it was not that there was nothing. It was just that any chaotic aura that appeared would be directly devoured by this hard object beside Chu Fumian. What is this? Chu Fumian looked at this hard object. It was about a meter-tall ellipsoid. Chu Fumian could feel a trace of vitality from it. An egg? This is an egg? Chu Fumian observed for a while. He felt that this thing was most similar to the egg of a creature. However, Chu Fumian had never heard of any creature's egg that looked like this. This egg was entirely gray. Rather than gray, it was more accurate to say that it was the same color as chaotic aura. There was no difference between it and the surrounding chaotic aura. Chu Fumian had read countless ancient books, but he had never heard of any creature's egg that looked like this. Moreover, this egg was still continuously devouring the chaotic aura. Chu Fumian racked his brain, but he still could not figure out the true identity of this egg. Xing Xuan. Helpless, he could only awaken Xing Xian in his mind. Xing came from outside the Nine Realms, so his knowledge far surpassed Chu Fumian's. Since Chu Fumian didn't know about it, it was very likely that the egg came from outside the Nine Realms. Chu Fumian was no longer as unfamiliar with the world outside of the Nine Realms as before. In the records of the Nine Realms, the Outer Realm had always been a mysterious place. Most of the records about the Outer Realms were based on people's imaginations. It was only through Xing Xian's mouth that Chu Fumian learned more about the Outer Realms. But now, Chu Fumian clearly understood that the Outer Realms was an even larger world. The 9 domains were just one side of the endless world. What's going on? Xing Xian's voice sounded surprised in Chu Fumian's mind. After following Chu Fumian, he rarely had the chance to be awakened by Chu Fumian. Generally speaking, even if he encountered trouble, Chu Fumian would choose to think of a solution by himself. He had only awakened Xing Xian a few times. I found something strange. Can you help me take a look? Chu Fumian didn't beat around the bush and said directly. With a move of his palm, a water screen condensed in front of him. The water screen showed the scene of the spirit spring. Oh, you actually found such a spirit spring? Xing Xian had already recognized Chu Fumian as his master. Now, as long as Chu Fumian was willing, Xing Xian could easily figure out what had just happened. But soon, his gaze focused on the strange egg. He confirmed it countless times with his eyes. Then, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide. An innate divine beast. This is an innate divine beast's egg. Xing Xian's voice was filled with surprise. An innate divine beast's egg? Even Chu Fumian's expression was as surprised as Xing Xian's. An innate divine beast. This was an existence that was only recorded in some legendary places of the Nine Realms. According to legend, When the heavens and earth were created, an innate divine beast was born from the primal chaos. They were called innate divine beasts. The current dragon clan, and even the ancient war dragon clan, had inherited some of the bloodline of the innate divine beast's ancestor, Tianlong. Some of the powerful demonic beast clans in the Nine Realms had inherited some of the bloodline of the innate divine beasts. But they could only be called demonic beasts and ferocious beasts, not divine beasts. This was because only the first generation of beasts born from the primal chaos were qualified to be called innate divine beasts. Even their descendants were not qualified to be called innate divine beasts. An innate divine beast's egg could only be hatched from the primal chaos. Could it be that this is an innate divine beast that was born from the primal chaos and hasn't hatched? Chu Fengmian said in disbelief. An innate divine beast was something that had only appeared tens of thousands of years ago, or even more distant eras. Now, there was actually an innate divine beast's egg in the spirit spring. How could Chu Fengmian believe this? That should be the case. Xing Xian's words were also somewhat uncertain. Based on his judgment, the most he could determine was that this egg should be an innate divine beast's egg. However, he was also confused as to why this egg had appeared in the spirit spring. Even with his knowledge, he had never heard of such a ridiculous thing. An innate divine beast's egg had not hatched from the primal chaos, but had reappeared tens of thousands of years later. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that this egg still had vitality. This proved that this innate divine beast's egg was actually a living creature. An innate divine beast's egg is the most precious treasure in the world. Chu Fengmian's eyes were fixed on this innate divine beast's egg. Innate divine beasts were legendary existences that could destroy the world. Back when the primal chaos was shattered, these innate divine beasts had definitely contributed the most to the battle. Later on, when the primal chaos was shattered, all the innate divine beasts in the world had fallen. It could be said that if this innate divine beast's egg really hatched, it would be the only innate divine beast in the world. Chapter 947. What's the matter, kid? Do you want to tame the egg and make it recognize you as its master? Xing Xian suddenly said with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Stop dreaming. An innate divine beast isn't something that can be tamed by humans. Innate divine beasts are born from chaos. It can be said that its bloodline is nobler than all living creatures. How can it be tamed? Xing Xian said Chu Fengmian's thoughts. The strength of an innate divine beast was reflected in countless legends. It could be said that even a 3-year-old child knew about it. It was impossible to say that Chu Fengmian wasn't tempted. Hearing Xing Xian's sarcasm, Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change. I can still give it a try. I'm afraid that no martial artist has ever tried to tame an innate divine beast. Chu Fengmian smiled. The opportunity is right in front of me. I can give it a try. The birth of innate divine beasts was even earlier than the birth of humans. Before humans created martial arts, innate divine beasts were already unhindered in the Desolation Era. In the Desolation Era, they were the overlords. Throughout history, no one had ever done such a crazy thing. It's a waste of effort. Xing Xian curled his lips. Is that so? Chu Fengmian said softly, as if he was replying to Xing Xian, but also as if he was talking to himself. If it was the Chu Fengmian of his previous life, he might also think that it was a waste of effort. However, this was something that had never happened to Chu Fengmian in his 2 lifetimes. Now it was happening to Chu Fengmian. Therefore, in Chu Fengmian's opinion, there was nothing impossible. If something like rebirth could happen to Chu Fengmian, then other things were also possible. Chu Fengmian observed the innate divine beast egg for a while. A drop of golden blood slowly dripped from his fingertip. Following Chu Fengmian's mind, it was sent to the side of the godly devouring python and dripped onto the eggshell of the innate divine beast egg. The eggshell was a glossy gray color. When the drop of golden blood landed on the surface, it gradually fused with the egg. What's going on? Is there no reaction? Chu Fengmian's consciousness was attached to the sky-devouring divine python to observe the egg. A drop of Chu Fengmian's golden blood landed on the egg and was sucked into it. However, nothing happened. Failed. Chu Fengmian couldn't make up his mind. An innate divine beast egg was something that had never been heard of even in ancient legends. There were even things that should not have existed in time. These connate divine beast eggs were born in the era when the chaos was created. Before the end of the chaos era, these innate divine beast eggs should have hatched. Who would have thought that there would be one left behind, and it was a living egg? While it was true that the eggs of ordinary demonic beasts could be assimilated with the blood essence, this was a Xiantian god beast we were talking about. Xing Xian's words weren't wrong. The bloodline of an innate divine beast was innately noble. Whether or not he could subdue it, Chu Fengmian was only giving it a try. Even if it was a failure, it was something that Chu Fengmian had expected. Just as he was about to give up, there was a sudden change in the place where the innate divine beast egg was located. The power of the innate divine beast egg, which had been dormant all this time, began to rise crazily. At the same time, the speed at which the egg devoured the surrounding chaos aura and spiritual power suddenly increased by hundreds of times. The huge attraction force instantly sucked in all the spiritual energy in the spiritual spring. It could be said that the entire spiritual spring was now in a state of chaos. What's going on? Chu Fengmian was a little flustered when he saw this change. He came to the spirit spring secretly. If he caused too much of a commotion, it would be troublesome for Chu Fengmian. Fortunately, the egg was located in the deepest part of the spirit spring. Although the commotion had spread out, the experts outside wouldn't notice it for a while. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's heart was filled with anticipation. The sudden change in the innate divine beast egg, which had been dormant all this time, was definitely unusual. It seemed that the drop of blood essence that Chu Fengmian had just dripped into the egg was not in vain. Is this possible? Xing Xian, who saw the scene in his mind, was speechless. He could naturally see that the change in the innate divine beast egg was definitely caused by the drop of blood essence that Chu Fengmian had dripped. Could it be that this brat is really a lucky cat that hit a dead mouse? Xing Xian said in disbelief. The innate divine beast egg was something that had never appeared in the legendary city. If it was really subdued, it would not only shock the 9 regions, but also any corner of the world. Subduing an innate divine beast with human strength was something that had never been described in the legendary city. While Chu Fengmian and Xing Xian were in shock, the egg of the innate divine beast had undergone another transformation. Countless arrays suddenly appeared from his eggshell. These arrays appeared in the air and turned into a huge vortex. The vortex expanded countless times and began to madly absorb the surrounding spiritual power. Almost in an instant, the spiritual power that was enough to devour hundreds of billions of spiritual stones was still expanding. In these few seconds, it could be said that the spiritual spring in the Beimang Academy was sucked dry. The spiritual spring in the Beimang Academy was enough to support the cultivation of countless disciples for tens of thousands of years. But in front of the innate divine beast egg, it would be sucked dry in a few seconds. How terrifying! Isn't the innate divine beast afraid of being stuffed to death after absorbing so much spiritual power? Chu Fengmian said with a dumbfounded expression. So much spiritual power was simply unimaginable. It could be said that if Chu Fengmian were to devour it, even if the spiritual power he needed was thousands or tens of thousands of times more than that of a martial artist, he would only be stuffed to death and explode. Compared to the innate divine beast egg, his battle dragon skill was not considered a big eater. This innate divine beast egg was. It's nothing for an innate divine beast to absorb such a little spiritual power. In the chaotic era, the chaotic aura was everywhere. How could it be so thin now that it's enough for an innate divine beast to be born? Chapter 948. Xing Xian said excitedly as he watched the transformation of the innate divine beast egg. I suspect that this innate divine beast egg didn't hatch because it didn't absorb enough chaotic aura in the chaotic era due to various changes. It's now hiding in the spiritual spring and constantly devouring the chaotic aura. It's about to reach a critical point. Your blood essence stimulated it, and it should hatch soon. No one in the capital of 9 domains had ever been able to witness the hatching of an innate divine beast. Xingxian was also very excited. It was rare for him to be so concerned about something. The divine sky-devouring python stayed quietly around the innate divine beast egg. The devouring vortex seemed to be only devouring the spiritual energy and chaotic aura in the spiritual spring. As for the divine sky-devouring python, the innate divine beast egg didn't seem to be interested in it at all. The devouring process lasted for a full minute. Chu Fengyan could feel that a large piece of empty space had been devoured in the huge spiritual spring. At least 1/3 of the spiritual spring had been devoured by the innate divine beast egg all of a sudden. Could it be that the spiritual spring has been completely devoured by the innate divine beast egg? Chu Fengyan looked at all this with his mouth wide open. He didn't know what to say. He was amazed. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Chu Fengyan wouldn't have thought that there would be something that could devour spiritual energy in such a way. Could it be the egg of the divine, sky-devouring beast? Chu Fengyan couldn't help but think. Among the innate divine beasts, there was a divine sky-devouring beast that was said to have the ability to devour the heavens. It could devour heaven and earth and everything. The divine sky-devouring python, formed by Chu Fengyan's spiritual energy, was actually a descendant of the divine sky-devouring beast and had inherited its devouring ability. It shouldn't be. Xingxian thought for a moment and shook his head. The innate divine beasts in history didn't have the same kind. Each of them was a unique individual. Therefore, this egg shouldn't be the divine, sky-devouring beast egg. Since the innate divine beast has the power to destroy heaven and earth, it should be normal for it to devour more spiritual energy. When he said this, Xingxian even felt a little lacking in confidence. Indeed, it was true that it had devoured more spiritual energy. However, it devouring 1/3 of the spiritual spring was a little too terrifying. This spirit spring was the largest spirit spring in the 9 regions. It could be said that the spirit springs of any of the 7 great sects were not even 1/3 as large as this one. This meant that the divine sky-devouring beast egg was enough to suck the spiritual spring of one of the 7 sects. Chu Fengyan didn't even dare to think about how much spiritual energy it had devoured. Chu Fengyan even suspected that the egg would suck the entire spiritual spring dry. After a while, the divine sky-devouring divine beast egg and the divine sky-devouring beast egg. However, by now, half of the spiritual spring's spiritual energy had been devoured by the innate divine beast egg. In the midst of the silence, a clear voice could be heard all of a sudden. Although it was insignificant, in Chu Fengyan's eyes, there was no excitement. The divine sky-devouring beast egg was finally going to hatch. Chu Fengyan's expression was one of extreme caution. Even a newborn baby of an innate divine beast would possess such terrifying power. Once it attacked Chu Fengyan, it would have to withdraw its consciousness from the sky-devouring divine python. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for Chu Fengyan's consciousness. Crack! The crisp shattering sounds gradually increased in number. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the divine, sky-devouring beast egg. More and more cracks appeared. At the same time, Chu Fengyan could feel that a small life had suddenly awakened in the egg. Be careful! Xingxian gave a rare warning. Even if it was a newly hatched divine beast, it was still the most terrifying existence in the world. Chu Fengyan nodded. He naturally knew this. That was why the sky-devouring divine python didn't approach the egg. Instead, it observed the changes in the egg from afar. Crack! At the last cracking sound, the cracks on the surface of the divine, sky-devouring beast egg were all connected. Then, it suddenly shattered in the air. The moment the eggshell broke, all of the eggshells suddenly disappeared from the void. Seeing this, Chu Fengyan felt a little heartache. Anything related to the divine, sky-devouring beast was invaluable. Originally, Chu Fengyan wanted to collect these eggshells. These eggshells were simply much harder than any of the spirit tools he had ever seen. If he could refine a spiritual weapon, It would definitely be a protective spiritual weapon not inferior to the Kanglen immortal armor. Now, all of them were shattered. But soon, Chu Fengmian didn't think about it anymore. His real goal was the divine, sky-devouring beast. Chu Fengmian's gaze followed the broken eggshell. Suddenly, his eyes showed some surprise. At the place where the eggshell was something about half a meter tall was standing there. From afar, this thing had a body of pure white long fur. It looked somewhat similar to a cat, but it was much rounder. At a glance, it was round and plump. What is this thing? Chu Fengmian looked at the round creature in front of him. It was simply beyond his imagination. Chu Fengmian had imagined countless times what this divine, sky-devouring beast egg could hatch into. Ancestor Tian Long, divine flame Qilin, and sky-devouring beast. Each of them were famous and extremely terrifying existences in ancient times. However, this round creature in front of him was completely different from the divine, sky-devouring beast in Chu Fengmian's mind. Xing Xian, what kind of divine, sky-devouring beast is this? Chu Fengmian thought for a while, but couldn't think of anything similar to this round creature in front of him. I don't know. Divine, sky-devouring beasts are all independent existences. This one is obviously different from any other divine, sky-devouring beast, Xing Xian replied. Although his voice sounded calm, he wasn't any better than Chu Fengmian. He was just as surprised as Chu Fengmian. And divine, sky-devouring beast, at least in appearance, was an existence without dignity. Chapter 949. In a Land of Spiritual Spring. While Chu Fengmian was observing the round creature also noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. The moment it looked over, Chu Fengmian felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. Terrifying. When it looked at Chu Fengmian, it was as if Chu Fengmian was going to be killed. Even though the creature's appearance was strange, it was still an innate divine beast, the most terrifying existence in the world. Just when Chu Fengmian was about to give up on the divine, sky-devouring python and withdraw his consciousness, the hostility suddenly disappeared. Then, the round, innate divine beast ran directly in the direction of the divine, sky-devouring python. In a land of spiritual spring, everyone could only fly. However, the round, innate divine beast ran over with a hop. Chu Fengmian couldn't even tell if the round, innate divine beast used its power. 9. From his chest, he could still vaguely say something. 9? Chu Fengmian obviously couldn't understand what the innate divine beast was saying. Is this guy really an innate divine beast? Aren't the legendary innate divine beasts able to speak human language? Chu Fengmian asked suspiciously. He had been doubting Xing Xian's judgment more than once. But no matter what, the strength of this little guy must be extremely terrifying. Although Chu Fengmian couldn't feel the strength of this little guy, Chu Fengmian felt fear from the bottom of his heart when he was targeted by the hostility just now. He had to bear a great pressure in an instant. Even if 10 supreme ancestors joined forces, they wouldn't be able to give Chu Fengmian such a great pressure. Xing Xian observed and said slowly, "This little guy has just hatched. According to humans, it's just a baby. Of course, it can't speak human language." Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian nodded secretly. Indeed, this little guy had just hatched. It could be said that the most terrifying thing was that it had such a terrifying strength when it was just hatched. 9. The round, innate divine beast ran over and hugged the divine, sky-devouring python. It was still saying something vaguely. This little guy. Before Chu Fengmian finished his words, his eyes suddenly changed. Vaguely, Chu Fengmian felt that there were several extremely terrifying auras coming directly to the land of spiritual spring. It seemed that the earth-shaking changes in the land of spiritual spring couldn't be hidden from the experts of Sky-Reaching Tower. The owner of each of these auras was many times stronger than Chu Fengmian. They were all old ancestors of the immortal realm. Let's go. Go. Chu Fengmian looked at the round, connate, sacred beast and said anxiously, "Come with me." Now, he didn't care if the innate divine beast could understand him or not. Although Chu Fengmian was unable to make him recognize him as his master, he would definitely be of great help if he continued to follow Chu Fengmian. To the was to take it. It was to the ofs. Was. S. 9. 9. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the innate divine beast was a little confused. However, it still turned into a ray of light and went into the divine, sky-devouring python. The innate divine beast was indeed the darling of heaven and earth. Even a newborn innate divine beast could understand Chu Fengmian's words. Let's go. Chu Fengmian's divine, sky-devouring python disappeared quietly. Less than half a minute after the divine, sky-devouring python disappeared, 3 figures came to the place where the innate divine beast egg was. However, the land of spiritual spring had undergone earth-shaking changes. Looking at the changes in the spiritual spring, the expressions of the 3 figures were all filled with shock. That mysterious egg actually disappeared. What happened? How could there be such a big movement? Half of the spiritual energy in the land of spiritual spring has disappeared. Could it be that someone sneaked into the land of spiritual spring and took the egg away? None of the 3 figures were able to figure out what was going on. What exactly happened in the land of spiritual spring? In just a few minutes, the land of spiritual spring had undergone a great change by the time they reacted. Half of the spiritual energy in the land of spiritual spring had disappeared completely. It shouldn't be that someone sneaked in. The land of spiritual spring was set up by us. No one from the 9 domains could sneak in without a sound. One of the figures, a white-haired elder, said slowly. Furthermore, that mysterious egg is most definitely not something that can be subdued and taken away by humans. Anyone who touches it will be met with a calamity. At this point, the white-haired elder couldn't help but shake his head. When they first discovered this mysterious egg, they also had the thought of capturing it. However, they were met with a calamity. A supreme ancestor died on the spot. Since then, no one dared to have any ideas about the egg. Does that mean that the egg suddenly disappeared on its own? Another eagle-faced man beside the white-haired old man said with a cold look in his eyes, "It's just an egg. Can spread its legs and run away? If an egg can't run away, what if it hatches?" Hearing the eagle-nosed man's words, the last figure beside him, a middle-aged lady, said coldly, "That egg has always been alive. Moreover, the spiritual energy in the surroundings was suddenly devoured. It's very likely that the egg hatched and the creature inside it ran away." Hatched? Then let's find it quickly. The egg is so powerful. The creature inside, it is very likely to be an extremely powerful ancient beast. Hearing the beautiful lady's words, the eagle-nosed man said hurriedly, "By phone, you should grow some brains. We can't even deal with the egg. Is the creature inside it something we can deal with?" The middle-aged lady said disdainfully, "You." Hearing the sarcasm, the eagle-nosed man, called by phone, was furious. "Don't argue anymore. Let's report this matter to the elders first." The white-haired old man's words stopped the fight. "We are here to guard the land of spiritual spring and the egg. Now that the egg has disappeared, let's report it to the pavilion master." "That's right. Stop arguing." The middle-aged lady sneered. "Then let's go." Chapter 950. I've really earned a lot this time. After devouring countless chaotic auras, my 9-realm swordsmanship has reached a perfect level. Returning to the courtyard, Chu Fengmian sat on the stone bench, feeling carefree. He had really earned a lot by choosing to live in the sky-reaching tower this time. Chu Fengmian sneaked into the spiritual spring and devoured the chaotic aura there. His 9-realm swordsmanship had reached the most perfect level of its current realm. Although there was no change in Chu Fengmian's realm, Chu Fengmian's true combat strength had increased tremendously. If Chu Fengmian broke through to the Destiny realm and became an emperor in the future, Chu Fengmian might even have the power to fight against Ancestor Wu. Of course, all of this was not Chu Fengmian's greatest opportunity. His greatest opportunity this time was the innate divine beast. By the way, where did the little guy go? Just now, Chu Fengmian saw the little guy turn into a stream of light and enter the sky-devouring divine python. However, now that Chu Fengmian returned to the courtyard, there was no trace of the little guy. Chu Fengmian spent a lot of effort to bring the innate divine beast out of the spiritual spring. If it disappeared, it would be troublesome. Chu Fengmian hurriedly activated his spiritual power to explore every corner of the courtyard. This courtyard was not big. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense quickly scanned it, but he did not find a trace of the innate divine beast. It's not here. Chu Fengmian's eyes were a little surprised. He just felt that the innate divine beast should have followed Chu Fengmian and left the spiritual spring. But now it was not in the courtyard. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian hurriedly activated his spiritual sense to explore the little guy's body. Then, Chu Fengmian's face revealed an indescribable strange feeling. On Chu Fengmian's body, on the crown of the divine tree, the little guy was lying on the crown of the tree. He even remodeled the crown of the tree, making it look like he was building a nest. Clearly, he was treating the sacred tree as his nest. Oh, this little guy should have sensed the aura of the divine tree, which is of the same origin as it, so it ran to the divine tree. Xing Xian suddenly said, "The tree of God and the connate divine beasts are the earliest life, forms born from the chaos of heaven and earth. They can be said to be of the same origin. It's normal for this little guy to be close to the tree of God. This little guy really knows how to enjoy himself." Chu Fengmian looked at the divine tree and couldn't help but smile. This little guy first connected a few branches of the tree of God together to build a frame. Then, he spread the leaves of the tree of God on the ground to make a soft bed. He was lying there quietly, as if he was resting. "Little fellow," Chu Fengmian called out softly. This connate divine beast must have understood Chu Fengmian's words, so Chu Fengmian began to converse with him. Hearing Chu Fengmian's voice, the innate sacred beast glanced at Chu Fengmian and mumbled, "9, 9." This caused Chu Fengmian to feel somewhat helpless. This little fellow was able to understand his words. Unfortunately, Chu Fengmian was unable to understand his words. "Forget it. Since you like this tree of God, you can rest here. All right, you don't have a name yet, right? Since you're called 9, then I'll call you Lil 9. Chu Fengmian looked at Lil 9 and said calmly. This little fellow seemed to be quite satisfied with the name Lil 9. After Chu Fengmian called it 99 a few more times, it returned to the tree of God and closed its eyes to sleep. It actually fell asleep. This little fellow's current strength should be around that of a ruler. It should be stronger than most rulers, but it shouldn't be a match for great ancestor Wu. Chu Fengmian looked at the sleeping Lil 9 and thought to himself, a newly born connate divine beast actually possessed strength comparable to that of a ruler. This was already extremely shocking. One had to know that most people or demonic beasts would never reach the level of a ruler in their entire lives. Only tens of millions of people could possibly give birth to a ruler. This kind of connate divine beast would stand at the peak of the 9 regions as soon as it made its move. Moreover, as it grew up in the future, it would also grow bit by bit. At that time, it was very likely that it would be much more terrifying than anyone in the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian took a few glances and left with his spiritual sense. He sat on the spot and continued to comprehend the sword technique. Another 2 days passed. Chu Fengmian's eyes slowly opened. In these 4 days, Chu Fengmian used the aura of chaos to practice his sword technique. It could be said that the effect of 40 years of bitter cultivation was much more useful. If there's an ancient spiritual spring, I can use the aura of chaos to practice my sword technique anytime and anywhere. Chu Fengmian could not help but sigh. The aura of chaos was really one of the most divine things in the world. With the aura of chaos, Chu Fengmian's practice of swordsmanship will be thousands of times faster. However, there were very few spiritual springs with the aura of chaos in the 9 regions, and they were tightly controlled by the major forces of the 9 regions. It was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to obtain alone. After the transformation of the spiritual spring in sky-reaching tower, it would be almost impossible to sneak in again. However, there would be a day when Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to reach the peak of the 9 regions. At that time, he would come for the spiritual spring again. Senior, the ancient fighting arena is about to open. Just as Chu Fengmian got up, a voice came from outside the courtyard. It seemed that the young attendant of Sky-Reaching Tower had come to call Chu Fengmian. Yes. Chu Fengmian got up and walked out of the courtyard in a single step. In Sky-Reaching Tower, Gu Jin was already standing outside, waiting for Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Chu Fengmian saw that Gu Jin's aura had undergone earth-shattering changes in the past 4 days. Her cultivation had been forcibly broken by Chu Fengmian, and her foundation was unstable. Using the aura of chaos was enough to stabilize her foundation. Although there was no change in Gu Jin's cultivation, her strength was at least twice as strong as it was 4 days ago. Facing an ordinary, unblemished realm expert at the 4th step of the life and death steps, as long as he did not encounter the geniuses of the 7 major sects, he would have a great chance of winning. Chapter 9:51. You've stabilized your cultivation. What you lack now is combat. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament is the best training for you. Chu Fengmian looked at Gu Jin and smiled. Gu Jin's talent wasn't considered weak, but she couldn't be compared to the true geniuses of the 7 sections. However, after being nurtured by Chu Fengmian, Gu Jin wasn't inferior to the ordinary geniuses of the 7 sections. However, what she lacked was combat experience. It was meaningless to have strength, but not know how to fight. Yes, Gu Jin nodded. She was extremely grateful to Chu Fengmian. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian, she wouldn't have been able to reach her current level of strength. Not to mention, she was now on equal footing with the disciples of the 7 sections. Let's go. Chu Fengmian saw them. In many of the surrounding rooms, the cultivators who were cultivating there had left one after another. Most of the cultivators in Sky Piercer Tower were here to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. At a glance, Chu Fengmian saw many experts. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament, the biggest event for the younger generation of the 9 regions, is finally about to begin. Chu Fengmian's eyes shone with excitement. Chu Fengmian had heard about the 9 Regions Genius Tournament for a long time. He was very excited to be able to participate in it himself. Furthermore, this time, it seemed to be more prosperous than any of the previous ones. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin left Sky Piercer Tower and headed straight for the heart of Martial Imperial City. After leaving the Heavenly Tower, the streets of the Martial Imperial City were filled with people. The number of cultivators who came to participate in or watch the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was in the tens of millions every year. All of the cultivators were heading in the same direction. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin were among the crowd. They walked slowly and arrived at the heart of Martial Imperial City in a short while. There was a huge teleportation array at the center of this place. Countless cultivators had disappeared from the teleportation array. About an hour later, Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin finally arrived in front of the transportation array. They gathered their spiritual energy and poured it into the array. Immediately, their figures disappeared from Martial Imperial City. When they opened their eyes again, they were already in a completely different place. A desert. As far as the eye could see, there was only an endless desert nearby. In front of Chu Fengmian was a huge arena in the middle of the desert. The ancient era's battle arena was huge and could accommodate millions of spectators at once. It could be said that some cities were much larger. In the middle of the ancient fighting arena, there was a huge arena. Looking from the outside, it was at least a few hundred miles wide. Chu Fengmian knew that the arena of the ancient era's battle arena was not as small as it appeared from the outside. A few hundred kilometers in length and width might be enough for some weaker martial artists. The 9 Regions Geniuses competition was an event left behind from the ancient era. It could be said that back then, there had been countless geniuses. Every time the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was held, some immortal realm old ancestors would participate in it. According to the rules of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, as long as one was under 100 years old, one could participate regardless of one's cultivation level. As long as they were of age, even if they were a supreme ancestor, they could participate. Of course, in the current era, it had been tens of thousands of years since a genius of this level had appeared. However, every time, there would be some geniuses who had reached the destiny realm and became emperors. A battle between emperors could cause the sky to fall and the earth to crack with a wave of their hands. An area of 1,000,000 miles could be destroyed for them. Therefore, there was another world inside the arena. It was thousands or tens of thousands of times larger than what it looked like from the outside. No matter what level a martial artist was at, they could fight to their heart's content. There are still empty seats over there. Let's go over. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw that there were still some empty seats. Now, most of the seats in the ancient era's battle arena were already full. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin sat a little closer to the outer circle. At a glance, they were inconspicuous. In the ancient era's battle arena, the most central seats were basically the peerless geniuses of the 7 great sections. Oh, there are actually so many young emperors? Chu Fengmian saw that there were at least a dozen young emperors sitting below. They were all under the age of 100. These people were all geniuses that the 7 great sects had tried their best to nurture. They were monstrous geniuses and had the possibility of becoming supreme great ancestors in the future. It seemed that the foundation of the 7 great sects was not as weak as Chu Fengmian had imagined. They indeed had some strength. However, Chu Fengmian thought in the blink of an eye. For example, the 6 demonic sects had been quiet for tens of thousands of years. This time, the 6 supremacies who appeared were all emperors. Otherwise, they were also figures whose strength was comparable to emperors. They were also less than 100 years old. Especially the Devil Emperor, he was a genius among geniuses. He was similar to Chu Fengmian. In fact, when they fought back then, he even suppressed Chu Fengmian. The 6 demonic sects that had been quiet for 10,000 years were already like this, let alone the 7 great sects at their peak. These emperors present might not be the strongest batch of geniuses from the 7 great sections. At least, some of the people that Chu Fengmian had heard were not here yet. Whoosh! In the distance, a dazzling sword light suddenly flashed. This sword light was as fast as lightning, so no one could see it clearly. In an instant, it fell into the ancient era's battle arena. When the sword light dissipated, the surrounding martial artists slowly saw that the sword light was actually a young man. The escape light was like a sword light. This escape light was so fast that people could not see it clearly. It's Jian Zhanxian, the super genius of the Tianjin sect. Jian Zhanxian. Even Jian Zhanxian is here. Is he going to participate this year? Hasn't he not come to participate in the past 2 years? Why is he suddenly here? Seeing the young man's figure, countless martial artists in the surroundings cried out in surprise. Jian Zhanxian? What an arrogant name. Chu Fengmian's gaze also fell on Jian Zhanxian. The sword intent on his body was extremely sharp. It could be said that the sword intent on the bodies of many great ancestors of the sword cultivation level that Chu Fengmian had seen was much more terrifying. Jian Zhanxian had cultivated an extremely sharp sword intent. At least in terms of swordsmanship, this Jian Zhanxian had gone very far. It seemed that the Tianjin sect was not as simple as it seemed. The real genius just did not usually appear. Gu Jin, who is this Jian Zhanxian? That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.